Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Open Mic here on the John Campea Show channel. My name, of course, is John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is just about every day, to have you, my international friends, join me as we get together to talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, and all sorts of good things. Now, for those of you who are not quite caught up yet, you might be wondering, where is the John Campea Show? Why is it Open Mic? Well, I announced last week over a number of occasions that the John Campea Show was going on hiatus for a couple of weeks. I really need to get caught up on a number of things, and open mics are just a lot easier to do, and that I would still do open mics every couple of days. So that's what we're doing here. So it's good to see all of you here. And by the way, guys, I'm going to let you know about something. For those of you watching on YouTube right now, I'm going to let you know about a little something different that's happening at the moment. Here's what's happening at the moment. We are now not just streaming to YouTube. This show right now is actually being streamed also to Twitch at the moment, and also being streamed live to Facebook at the same time. So today it's we're all included. It's being streamed to Twitch, it's being streamed to YouTube, it's being streamed to Facebook. All of us hanging out together, and it's good to have you guys here today. So listen, Open Mic is all about taking your guys' live questions, and that's what we're going to do. But there are just a couple of things here that I want to touch on first before we get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is this. Now, we've been talking a lot, obviously, over the past number of months about the whole impact that COVID-19 has been having, some sort of an impact, of course, on the movie industry, both theatrically, which it's killing the movie theaters, but also all these different movies have been put on hiatus. Their shooting stopped and ceased. We're going to see a couple of them get back to shooting now. Avatar 2 has already started shooting again. We're going to see a number of others start up again, but obviously movies have had their release dates pushed and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so a little while ago, basically all the different movie theater chains came out and said, well, good news, we're all reopening again in mid-July. You know, Regal announced that they were coming back in mid-July. Cineworld, their owners, did as well. AMC theaters have announced they're coming back. What is it called? Cinemark. Cinemark has already started the process of slowly opening up all their theaters, and they all say they're going to be open in time for Mulan on July 24th, and obviously in time for Tenet on July 31st. Of course, Tenet just bumped its release date. However, the situation changes. And that's the great and awful thing about a lot of things that go on in the world, is that new things happen every single day, right? New information comes up and new things happen that change our plans. You know, because when we thought that when Tenet moved from, what was it, July 17th to the 31st, we thought, okay, so they only moved it 2 weeks. It's a foregone conclusion. That thing's coming out. That thing's coming out. Mulan already had its release date moved. And the Disney CEO, Bob Chapek, has said, well, we like this release date on the 24th. We think we're going to release on the 24th. Well, here's the problem. In the last couple of weeks or so, particularly really in the last week and a half or so, while there are a lot of countries around the world that have done a good job of managing and dealing with the COVID-19 outbreak, there are also places that have not done a good job. Dare I say, there are many places that have massively screwed things up. The United States being one of them. And we are seeing now brand new massive spikes in the coronavirus situation. Brand new massive spikes in the coronavirus situation is going on. And that is causing a lot of new concerns and worries. Actually, I think California also just had the record set for the most brand new cases of COVID in a day. We've had other states as well. Houston is saying they're getting overwhelmed and all this kind of stuff. Well, when new information comes to light, then different places need to reassess where they're coming from and where they're going. So here we are in a situation where now, whereas just about 2 weeks ago, Disney and Bob Chapek said with some certainty, we like that July 24th release date. Now we're hearing from the Wall Street Journal, /Film, and several other prominent sources. Now we're hearing that they are actually considering bumping the July 24th date. And I've got a feeling that Tenet, even though I felt certain that once they moved Tenet just a couple of weeks, from the 17th to the 31st, I felt confident that, hey, if they're moving it and they're only moving it a couple of weeks, I feel pretty damn confident they're going to keep that July 31st date. Well, that was great, but the information changed. Now we've got all new route breaks and all this kind of stuff out, and it's great for the movie theaters is saying that they're going to open up mid-July. But guess what? If there's no new movies to play, if there's no Mulan, if there's no Tenet, this could add serious repercussions to the notion that they may actually have to consider not opening in mid-July. And this is where it gets really dangerous. Listen, AMC Theaters is already saying that we're going to be able to reopen, but we don't know if we're going to be able to stay in business. Like, the damage may have already been done. Regal was getting dangerously close to a point of disaster financially and all this kind of stuff. And here's the thing, I got to wonder, we've already heard that 40% of China's theaters are going to close down this year because of the damage already done by the COVID-19 shutdown. Like, the reports, we talked about this on the show a few weeks ago, the reports are saying that 40% of China's theaters are just going to go out of business in the next little while. Period. Even if they open up again in mid-July. Even if everything keeps rolling again and gets up and running again in mid-July, 40% of the second biggest movie market in the world, their theaters are going to be closing. If, for whatever reason, if we get, and this is theoretical and hypothetical, if we get into a position where North American theaters can't open again, really, or in some places they're opened again, but they might have to shut down again, where they can't open again till September, October, AMC's done. The world's biggest movie theater chain is done. And that's going to cripple movie studios because that's a lot of their revenue gone just like that. This thing could get worse before it gets better. Now, again, I am simply sitting here speculating about the worst case scenario. There is still very much a possibility that we're going to see that Mulan keeps its July 24th release date, that Tenet keeps its July 31st release date, that the theaters do open up mid-July. But I'm telling you guys, as somebody who has felt very confident that everything would be up and running again mid-July for the movie theaters and the new movies coming, I got to tell you, as somebody who's been very confident about that, I ain't so confident in it anymore. I'm not so confident in it anymore. So here's keeping our fingers crossed. Here's keeping our fingers crossed that we will see something miraculous happen, that good news will prevail for all, and that we will be right back to talking about Mulan coming out here imminently, to talking about Tenet coming out imminently. Here's hoping for all that. But listen, I also want to make that the topic of today's question of the day. And I wanted to ask you guys this. So just before the show started, about an hour before the show started, I hopped on and created a poll. And I asked you guys simply this. I asked you guys, with the new rising spikes and record numbers of new cases of COVID-19, do you think that theaters will still open mid-July and that films like, and read more, films like Mulan, Tenet will arrive in July? We discussed this and more on today's show. Almost 5,000 of you guys have voted on that poll that we put up just before the show. And right now, only 36% of you guys, out of nearly 5,000, only 36% of you guys are thinking, yep, the theaters are still going to open. Mulan's going to open. Tenet's going to open. We feel good about this. Only 36% of you guys feel that way, whereas 64% of you guys are saying no. The openings are going to be delayed again. This is interesting because I did a poll not too long ago asking kind of the same question, and it was kind of 50-50. But now it's kind of swaying about, again, 64% of you guys are saying no, the stuff is not going to open in July. 36% of you are still holding on to faith that it will. Let's see how this all turns out. All right, guys. With that down, I got one other thing I want to talk about here quickly. And that is this. And I'm sure many of you guys are going to want to bring this up in the live questions. And by the way, if you guys want to get a live question or comment on the show, you guys can simply use the tip link in the top line of the description of this video, or you can just enter it in manually. It doesn't matter if you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook. Just go to streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your comment or question on the show, and you'll be supporting the channel at the same time. And I'm sure many of you guys are going to want to talk about this, but I should bring this up. With all the talk recently about, Henry Cavill coming back, J.J. Abrams looks like he's going to do a Superman movie, and it'll probably have Henry Cavill in the lead. With all the talk now about Michael Keaton coming back, or at least he's in negotiations to come back. The rap is still saying it could go either way, but let's say, for instance, that it does. It brings up an interesting question. Where does the DCEU go from here? What is the DCEU's plan right now? Because let's do a quick history here, right? The DCEU came out with Man of Steel, masterpiece of a film, one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. I love it. And then they also came out with Batman versus Superman. They came out with Wonder Woman. They came out with Suicide Squad. They came out with Justice League. They did a bunch of things. And it's fair to say, even if you're the most diehard fan of the DCU, it's fair to say that those films did not get the results that Warner Brothers was hoping for. That's fair to say, right? That's at least fair to say. At the very minimum, Warner Brothers was not satisfied with the results that they were getting from the box office, from the audience reactions, from the critic reactions. They weren't getting the results they wanted. Now, there are people like me that liked every single one of the DCEU movies, Birds of Prey notwithstanding, that liked all of the DCEU movies, but a lot of people didn't do quite as well. So in came a new sheriff in Walter Hamada. Walter Hamada comes in, and he implements a new philosophy that says, for the next couple of years, and this was a couple of years ago now, he said, for the next couple of years, we're not going to focus our movies or our attention on shared cinematic universe. We're going to focus our attention on making good, solid, standalone movies. That's what we're going to do. And look at the results. Aquaman comes out. It's a crowd pleaser of a movie. I mean, it didn't have the best critic or audience reviews in the world, but they were good. They were really good. Good critic, good audience reviews, and the movie made $1 billion at the box office. I mean, I always knew the film would be successful, but I never thought it would hit $1 billion. And it hit $1 billion at the box office. The first DCEU movie to hit $1 billion at the box office. And it was truly a standalone film. There was one quick minor reference to the events of Justice League. You defeated Steppenwolf. What? What did he say? Never mind. Move on. That was it. That was the only reference at all to the shared DCEU. That was it. So it was essentially a standalone movie, made $1 billion. They do Joker, an outside of the DCEU universe, a true standalone movie, which they might do a sequel to. But at the time, it was intended as a true standalone movie. And what happened? Academy Award nominations, Academy Award wins, another $1 billion film at the box office, one of the most celebrated films of the year. Boom. Then they do Shazam. Well, I think Shazam came before Joe, but then let's take in consideration Shazam, also done very standalone. There are some references to the rest of the DCU, but for all intents and purposes, Shazam was a standalone movie. And it had tremendous audience reactions and tremendous critical reactions. And it wasn't a huge blockbuster hit, but it was at least profitable by a little bit, but huge audience reactions, huge critic reactions, blah, blah. And then Birds of Prey, everybody's got a bad day at the office. That was Birds of Prey, but whatever. So this new idea that Walter Hamada had of, kind of going into this direction of we're going to focus on the standalone stuff for now has really worked. But it feels like right now they're now looking at turning the corner again and getting back into big DC shared cinematic universe ideas. And of course, that really got introduced with the idea of Michael Keaton coming in to play Batman again. If it happens, it's still an if, but if it happens, and then there's some whispers and rumblings about what it could all mean and tying this together and, them doing Flashpoint and all that kind of stuff and blah, blah, blah. So it raises the question, if Henry Cavill's coming back and if Michael Keaton does end up being Batman, and if they start doing all this stuff, what is the plan for the DCEU now? Walter Hamada did a great job of stabilizing the situation at Warner Brothers and the DCEU, getting the films back on track, making them hugely successful, giving them great critic responses and audience responses. Okay, but we all knew that wouldn't go on like that forever. We knew they weren't going to go really just individual film forever. We knew at some point they would get back to really focusing on shared cinematic universe, whether that's multiverse or not. And it seems like, and I don't know for sure, and nobody knows for sure, but it seems like now is when they're starting to make that turn. with new talks of Henry Cavill coming back, which, by the way, in case you didn't notice, I mean, there's Henry right there. For those of you who don't know, I have a huge appreciation for Henry Cavill Superman. He's my favorite Superman. But that being said, about Henry Cavill coming back, about Michael Keaton in there, shared cinematic, is that what they're doing? And are they going full-blown multiverse? I think it's a mistake if they do. I think going full-blown multiverse is a mistake, but we don't know that that's what they're doing, so we'll have to wait and see. All I know is that for the last couple of years, the DCEU and DC in general has done a really good job of turning the ship around. Again, getting the box office results that they always wanted, getting the critical responses they've always wanted, getting the audience responses that they've always wanted. They finally got to that place. Time to move into the next stage. What is it going to be? Is it going to be still more isolated films? Is it going to be expanding that cinematic universe kind of pitch, which kind of looks like they're doing? And if they do go into the shared cinematic universe pitch more again, are they going to do it in a multiverse format that kind of looks like it? What are the upsides? What are the downsides? I mean, it's a fascinating time right now for the DCEU, so let's keep our eyes on. All I know is that I'm super excited to see Wonder Woman 84. I cannot wait to see what Patty Jenkins has in store for us for Wonder Woman 84. So we'll see how that all goes. All right, guys. With all that down, let's now move on and start taking what is the main point of doing these open mics, which is taking your live questions. We have a whole ton of them coming in. So let's jump over and start taking those live questions from you guys. The first one we got here comes to us from Israel King, who writes, over under 30%. The Last of Us gets a movie or TV show announcement. The second game is controversial, but it broke sales records, and I think there is money to be made. Well, I mean, you have to go over 30%, Israel King, because they've already done it. They've already fully announced a HBO Last of Us series is coming from both the showrunner and the director of Chernobyl. So the showrunner from Chernobyl and the director from Chernobyl are both coming on board the Last of Us series. It is underway. It is coming. So it is not only over 30%, it is an absolute 100% because it's already happened. So if you're a Last of Us fan, and by the way, Last of Us 2, I haven't played the game. I've only watched the 11-hour story version of it. Yes, an 11-hour. I watched an 11-hour story version of Last of Us 2, and I can tell you the story is genius. The story of Last of Us 2 is an absolute masterpiece. If it was a movie, I'd give it all the Oscars. It was so much better than a video game narrative. It's the best video game narrative ever in history, bar none, by a mile. And yeah, there's some controversy out there. Some people don't like it just because they don't like it. Some people don't like it for all the wrong reasons. It's a girl. Whatever. Some people, but there's a bunch of people who don't like it simply because they don't like it, and that's perfectly fine. But for me, I was shockingly surprised about how good that narrative was. Again, I didn't play the game. Maybe if I played the game, it wouldn't feel as natural. But just watching the story version, it kind of blew my socks off. Anyway, let's move off here. Ryan Lohner writes, when I wrote on Tuesday about seeing both versions of Insomnia, I wasn't talking about a special edition of the Nolan film, but the original Swedish film with Stellan Skarsgård, which is very much worth a look if you love the remake so much. Yeah, you know what? And I just thought you were talking about some alternate ending, which I had not seen. It's like, hey, look, the only one I know is the theatrical version. That's the version to me, blah, blah, blah. I totally forgot about the Stellan Skarsgård original one. And yes, Insomnia is my favorite Christopher Nolan film. More than Memento, even more than Dark Knight. That's how much I love Insomnia. And I know a lot of you guys have still not seen Insomnia. You really should. Give it a chance one of these days to check it out. Okay, let's move on here. Next up, Min Tran writes. Where'd you go? Min Tran writes. One of two. Mr. Said Out B or Mr. Said Out Bitch is the robber that Lucifer and Amenadiel caught at the beginning of season 2, and Lucifer back took an armor truck season 3, and the guy that robbed Lucifer at the start of season 4. So my question, with the creator saying that Lucifer still being in hell at the start of the season, do you think Mr. Set Out Bitch will be in the new season? If so, at what point in the season? I don't think so. I think they've moved on from that character. If it's the one I'm thinking of, I think they moved on from that character, like the one who plopped him down in the middle of the desert. I think they've moved on from that character. I don't see any reason to go back to him in season 5. By the way, I have not heard that they aren't. I mean, they may. I haven't heard that they aren't. I'm just saying from a fan's point of view of speculation, I'm going to guess no. Did I see it right? Did they announce the beginning of season 5 is going to be August 11th? If so, I'm a little bummed because I had heard for a long time that Lucifer season 5 was going to come in July. Granted, August 11th isn't much further off, but still, I've just been waiting so long for the next season of Lucifer. God, I love that show. And of course, they've now given season 6 the green light, so we're going to get a season 6. If you guys haven't started watching Lucifer, you guys need to watch Lucifer. It's a hell of a show. All right, next up, Austin Alberto writes, John, I know the likelihood of this happening is slim to none, but is there any remote chance that Ben Affleck could return as Batman if the Snyder Cut blows everyone away? Thanks and keep up the great work. P.S. Go Bruins. I mean, listen, you never say never. Is there any, if you're asking, is there any chance? Of course there is. Yeah, of course there is. There's a chance a meteor could hit outside my house today and I get superpowers. It's possible. Highly unlikely. Look, you guys know Ben Affleck, the love I have for Ben Affleck and his Batman in particular. He is my favorite iteration of Batman. I'm not saying that Batman versus Superman was better than The Dark Knight. I'm just saying Ben Affleck's iteration of Batman is my favorite iteration of Batman. And I've talked about that a lot on the show. And I think Ben Affleck is amazing. And I love Ben Affleck. He's my favorite Batman. But I don't think you're going to see him come back. And again, this whole thing, if the Snyder Cut is a huge hit, I don't know why everybody thinks that's a real possibility. Now, look, I love Man of Steel. I think it's one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. I like Batman versus Superman. And I like Justice League. But the reality is, half the audiences hated all of those, and half the critics hated all of those. I don't know why people think that suddenly now magically that's all going to change and everybody's going to suddenly love this. I have a feeling I'm going to like it because I've liked all the other stuff that Snyder's done. But I don't see any reason to have this belief that even though we already saw him do Man of Steel and he did an amazing job with Man of Steel, but half the people hated it. I just don't see how we can, with any amount of reasonable thought, believe that all of a sudden everybody's going to love Snyder's vision of the DC universe. I wish they would, but I don't see any reason why we should believe that. There's nothing there to support the notion that all of a sudden magically half the people out there who have hated Snyder's vision of the DC universe, starting with Man of Steel, are all of a sudden magically going to love his vision of the DC universe. I don't see it happening. I think I'm going to like it. I think a bunch of you guys watching this show are going to like it, but I mean, and it's possible. So anyway, getting back to the Ben Affleck part, I really don't think so. I would love it. And it could happen. But as of right now, I don't see anything that would indicate that it would happen. So I'm going to guess no, but never say never. Never say never. All right, thanks for that, Austin. All right, next up, an anonymous viewer writes, Hey, John, do you think that Marvel could do a Disney Plus series on Cap returning all the stones? I think they could do a 6-episode thing, one for each stone and Mjolnir, or however the hell you spell it. Thanks, you're the GOAT. Well, thanks a lot for that. I mean, whenever you ask the question, if you ever ask a question that has either the words could or ever, the answer is always yes. Could that happen? Yes. Could it ever happen? Yes. Is it likely to happen? I doubt it. I mean, we already know what happens. You know, he goes in, he returns stones. It'd be interesting to see how he does it, but there's no stakes. We know he survives it. We know he gets through it. We know he ends up where he is at the end. And I don't see Chris Evans having any interest in coming back to do a story like that. Nor do I see Chris Evans have any interest in coming back when he's been like the lead guy of the MCU theatrically to come back and do a side Disney Plus show. It wouldn't even be a prime Disney Plus show. It would be a side Disney Plus show. By the way, here's the little, remember back when, Cap went away? Well, here's that little side story. I just don't know that he would do it. I don't know what the motivation for Chris Evans to do something like that is. And if you're Marvel and you do get Chris Evans back as Captain America, and by the way, Chris Evans will come back as Captain America. him and Robert Downey Jr. will both be back. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, maybe not even in the next 3 years, but believe it, they will be back. But I'm just saying, if Marvel could get Chris Evans back right now, are they just going to use him for a side story Disney Plus show? I don't think so. I think they put him right back front and center in the movies. But again, that's just my guess. That's just my guess. So I'm not expecting to see that series. Maybe an animated thing, but I don't expect us to see that as a series. But never say never. It is a possibility. It absolutely is a possibility. I mean, hell, I didn't think they would do She-Hulk. And they're doing She-Hulk. So it's definitely a possibility. All right, Min Tran writes, at any point in the Doom Patrol, do you think the Clay, I never pronounce her last name right, Kay Chalice, Jane's original personality, would appear as a personality more than she was in season 1? Oh, I have no idea. It's impossible to say. I mean, that's flipping a coin because I have no idea at all what they're doing with Doom Patrol season 2. I have no concept whatsoever of what they're doing with Doom Patrol season 2. And then depending on what they're doing with Doom Patrol would have a direct impact on, well, then which of the personalities would suit the stories best. And since I have no idea, and I've purposefully not read into it, I've not been doing any research, I don't want to know what's coming in Doom Patrol season 2. I'm just looking forward to watching Doom Patrol season 2 because Doom Patrol is awesome. That's another one, guys, that if you haven't started watching Doom Patrol, highly recommend it. Like, seriously, who would have thought that the 3 absolute best of the last, 2 years, the 3 absolute best comic book television programs would be properties that most people have no idea about? Doom Patrol, The Boys, and Umbrella Academy. Like 3 absolutely outstanding shows, and all 3 of the shows are all completely different from each other. If you have not checked out Doom Patrol, I highly recommend going and watch it. It's ballsy, it's smart, it's absolutely hilarious, it's great sci-fi with great performances in it and all that kind of stuff. If you have not watched Doom Patrol, get on that, go and start watching Doom Patrol. Okay, with that down, let's move on to our next question. And our next one comes to us from Gabriel SSJ3, who writes, hey, John, love your show. Thank you so much, Gabriel. First time tipping. Well, thank you for supporting the channel, man. I appreciate that. Well, it's official. South Park has left Hulu and is now on HBO Max. Eric Cartman, screw you, Hulu. I'm going to HBO. Also, over under the new season of South Park pokes fun at COVID-19 throughout the entire season. The entire season? I don't think the entire season. They've got too much stuff that they love to joke about and they want to make as subject matter for their episodes. So the entire season? No. Does it come up at least as a major topic in one of the episodes? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I can't fathom that at least one episode of the new season isn't directly about COVID-19. I'd be shocked. Maybe even 2 episodes, but would they take their entire season to do that? No. I think for a couple of reasons, on a practical level, the jokes just get tired. Plus, and then, like I said before, the guys just have too much stuff they want to do and too much stuff they want to talk about. So I don't think it'll take up the entire season. Although I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with this now that it's on HBO. All right. Thanks for writing that in, Gabriel. Next up, Ray writes, John, since you enjoyed the story so much of Last of Us 2, I'm curious whether you think it's better than the first. I do, actually. The Last of Us 1 is my favorite game of all time because of the narrative, and 2 did the franchise justice, but it wasn't better than 1 in my opinion. In my opinion, it was. And you guys know that I love the story of Last of Us 1. I love it. And you know what? You could also make a fair point in saying Last of Us 2, can't exist without Last of Us 1, right? But Last of Us 2, it's much like the situation of, like, say, the Russo brothers and Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon created, really essentially, Joss Whedon created what is the MCU in his movie, The Avengers. Kevin Feige's talked about this, about how Joss Whedon they already started the MCU with the previous movies, but it was the Avengers where Joss Whedon basically was the architect of the blueprint of this is what an MCU movie is. And the Russo brothers were then later able to come on and build on that foundation that Joss Whedon had already laid. And without all the stuff that Joss Whedon did, the stuff that the Russo brothers did never would have happened. You could say the same thing for Last of Us 2 with Last of Us 1, and that would be a fair criticism. But I still, overall, just as a pure story, because it's able to take all that groundwork that Last of Us 1 laid, all that beautiful character groundwork that was laid in Last of Us 1, Last of Us 2, they build on it to absolute mind-boggling, masterfully told storytelling. So I prefer Last of Us 2, but I really kind of look at it as one story because you can't have a Last of Us 2 without a Last of Us 1. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the heart from Last of Us 2 is because of the groundwork laid in 1. So it's hard to look at them as separate things in my mind. So that's an interesting question. My gut reaction is to say I prefer 2, but it really is a part of Last of Us 1 as well. So it's a good question. And again, remember, I'm speakly talking in terms of the story. I'm simply talking in terms of story, not gameplay or anything like that. So that's my thought on it. All right, thanks for that, Ray. Next up, Ray also writes, I can't believe Last of Us 2 is getting review bombed the way it is. It's ridiculous considering all the things aside from the story, like the graphics, gameplay, audio, visual presentation. There is no way this game is anything lower than a 5. Come on now. Well, I mean, look, everything is subjective. Everything is subjective, right? You can have a movie that you think is the best movie in the world, and there are going to be other people out there that don't agree. And that's fine. Like, you may think the graphics are great, and you may think the gameplay is great, and you may think the audios and visuals are great and all that, but somebody else may not. And that's fine. Now, look, there is a segment of people out there that are just whiny babies. They made the leads a girl. I can't handle my masculinity is so insecure. I can't handle that they have a girl doing this. But that's just a segment. There are going to be a bunch of people who just look at the same story that I looked at and play the same game that you played and just had a different experience with it. You know? Like, look, the original Star Wars movie. There are people who just watch the original Star Wars movie and they don't see what the big deal is. Now, I may think that's crazy, but you got to respect that. That's just the subjectivity of storytelling and stuff like that. There are going to be people who play this game that I think is the most masterful story I've ever seen in a video game and not have the same feelings. And that's the great thing about the art, is that we all have different experiences with it. So yeah, some of it is review bombing, but some of it's legit too. Some people just legitimately don't like it. That doesn't undermine your appreciation for the game. Just because other people don't like it doesn't mean that undermines or devalues your appreciation for the game. Any more than you not liking a particular movie undermines or devalues somebody else's appreciation for that movie. So it's all good. It's all good. Okay, next up. Ray again writes, John, even if it takes $50 donation for a spoiler review of The Last of Us 2, I will gladly pay that. I know not a movie, but I think a lot of your fans would like that. After giving some people time to finish, of course, just saying there's so much to discuss. There is, but honestly, I'm taking a break. Not to mention, if I'm going to do a spoiler review of something, I generally do it 2 or 3 days after it comes out, not 2 or 3 weeks. Not to mention right now, I'm really trying to take a break on how much I'm doing. That's why I'm only doing things like open mics and things like that right now. So that's why I'm doing that. But yeah, so I probably won't be doing a spoiler discussion. Probably not a spoiler discussion, because I mean, there's really no point in doing a spoiler discussion 2 or 3 weeks after it's done. So, I mean, I don't know. Never say never. Maybe in a couple of weeks when the John Campea Show is back and we're back up and running again at doing our regular schedule, maybe something like that could be done. I'm going to guess no, but who knows? Maybe we will. All right. Thanks for asking, man. All right. Next up, A Silly Goose writes, I've only watched A Clockwork Orange one time. For a while after I watched it, I was overall displeased with it. Over the years, I've reflected heavily on it, and it's solidly one of my favorites. It has a powerful message of change, regret, and redemption. Well, see, that is one of the other great things. That's one of the other great things as stories go, right? Because stories don't just hit us all in individual ways. They also hit us at a specific time and place of where we are in our lives. And sometimes, as we go through our lives, we have different experiences that change us and mold us and make us different. And so we can come back to a movie or a story that maybe we watched or read 10 years ago and now have a completely different experience with it. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. One of the ones that I bring up all the time is Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards. I don't know what it was. The first time I saw the movie, I hated it. Hated it. A few years later, I sat down to watch it again, and I watched it again. I'm like, what? Why didn't I love this? And it's now like literally one of my top 2 favorite Quentin Tarantino movies. And it was just, I was at a different place in my life a few years later. And that can have a minimal to very profound impact on how we experience a movie or a television show or a story or something like that. It can have a profound impact. So yeah, if you watch Clockwork Orange at one point in your life and it had one effect on you, then maybe many years later, as you know, the circumstances in our lives change, we as people change, all that kind of stuff, it could have a completely different impact on you years later. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. It's, again, one of the great things about the art. All right, next up, Dan V writes, where we go. I'm sorry, but you are incredibly wrong. I love it when people tell me I'm wrong. But you are incredibly wrong when it comes to calling Batman Beyond a failure that lasted 3 seasons. It was 3 seasons and 52 episodes, where Superman was 3 seasons and 54 episodes. Your logic would dictate that Superman was also a failure. That isn't true either. So it's disingenuous. Oh, now I'm not only wrong, now I'm being disingenuous. Okay, This is a great one already. It's disingenuous to call Batman Beyond a failure. Actual failures would be 1 season of Avengers show of Ant-Man leading the team, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, Green Lantern, and Beware the Batman, where the Green Lantern show, is that Green Lantern? Green Lantern show was praised. Then the amount of episodes doesn't determine whether a show is good or a success, which should go without saying. Silver Surfer was 1 season. It was really good. Yeah, but no one's ever heard of it and nobody talks about it. And was really good. It was good in your opinion. Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man is great at 26 episodes, which ended with Disney buying Marvel. At least be fair. Okay, here's the thing though, Dan. Number one, don't be one of these idiots who takes somebody's opinion and say, you're being disingenuous. No, I was being very, very truthful about my assessment of it. You just don't like it. But you're missing something incredibly big here. Superman was only 3 seasons. Okay, let's look at that for a second. What you just said is basically this. John, how can you say Bobby Boucher, yes, that's a Waterboy reference. How can you say Bobby Boucher isn't that great of a quarterback just because he only threw 2 touchdown passes in 3 games? There was a 3-game stretch where Tom Brady only threw 2 touchdown passes in 3 games. Are you saying he's a failure? Well, here's the problem with that. Tom Brady also has 6 Super Bowl rings, multiple MVPs, multiple Super Bowl MVPs, set multiple all-time records, blah, blah, blah. The establishment, it has already established the greatness of Tom Brady. That 3-game stretch wasn't the only sample size we had. That 3-game stretch where he only threw 2 touchdown passes in a 3 games, that isn't all there is. Tom Brady is already well established as one of the greats, if not the greatest quarterback of all time. Right? So trying to compare that to Bobby Boucher playing 3 games and throwing 2 touchdown passes in 3 games, that's just, well, it's not just incorrect, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to try to do that. Right? Superman has already been established for decades and decades and decades as one of the greatest, most popular, most successful superhero characters of all time. Yeah, maybe there was one animated show that they did of him that only lasted 3 seasons and blah, blah, blah. Sure. But it didn't matter because Superman is already Superman. He is already world-renowned as one of the most successful, all-time, greatest granddaddy of all superhero characters, one of the most recognizable fictional characters in the world of all time. Trying to compare that to Batman Beyond is ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. And it's not even trying to compare apples to oranges. It's trying to compare apples to spaceships. Batman, there is nothing to Batman. You walk out on the street today, and I put this challenge to people before. You go out to a movie theater, which are all closed right now, and as 500 average movie fans come out of movie theaters, if you stopped and polled 500 of them, have you ever heard of Terry McGinnis? I guarantee you 490 of them have never heard of him. Batman is Bruce Wayne. To them. Batman is Bruce Wayne. To them. And unlike Superman, who has had decades and decades and decades and decades and decades of huge movies, success, comic runs, blah, 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 most recognizable, blah, blah, blah. Ask 500 average film fans if they've ever heard of Terry McGinnis. Now, what my point is when I talk about Batman Beyond, remember, I've never said Batman Beyond is a bad show. It didn't really work for me, but that's okay. There are lots of shows that don't work for me that are actually pretty good, and a lot of people like them. That's fine. I've never said Batman Beyond is a bad show, but I've said that's all you got. If you want to take arguably the most popular comic book character in the world, Batman, remember I'm saying arguably the most popular, famous, successful comic book character in the world being Batman, where the whole world and the whole audience knows Batman as Bruce Wayne, they've never heard of Terry McGinnis, and you want to say, we think the average movie-going audience is going to be cool if we rip that whole thing away that they know about Batman and completely change it up and go with this. Okay, but you're going to need more groundwork than a single animated series that only lasted 3 seasons. With Superman, you do. You have a huge resume of all this stuff that worked and happened. Look, and I am simply not sitting here and saying a Batman Beyond live action movie absolutely 100% cannot work. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is there's a lot stacked against it. And if you're not going to be biased, you have to acknowledge that. There is a world of stuff stacked against it that would make it very difficult. And your comparison of, a Batman Beyond that nobody's ever heard of, that, again, average movie-going audience, never heard of Terry McGinnis. You try to compare that to Spider-Man and Superman. It's comparing apples to spaceships. Could it work? Sure. Listen, I said myself, after watching Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I said myself, coming out of that, it's like, you know what? They found a way to make Miles Morales work for the average film goer, even though the average film goer knows Spider-Man as Peter Parker. Now, of course, Peter Parker has almost as big of a role in that movie as Miles Morales does. It's still Peter Parker, Spider-Man being Spider-Man, and I'm sure that was important. It was very smart on Sony's part to do that. But, they found a way to make Miles Morales work and for Miles Morales to be conceivable as being Spider-Man. And so I said, coming out of Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse, I said, you know what? Possibilities. I mean, the Miles Morales situation is very, very different from the Terry McGinnis situation, granted. But I said, coming out of Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse, I think if you're one of those people, for those of you who watch my show, you remember me saying this. I said, if you're one of those people who have always really wanted to see a Terry McGinnis thing, I think your chances just went up. I didn't necessarily think up by a lot, but I said, I think your chances just went up, because if Sony could find a way, again, Miles Morales is a different situation than the Terry McGinnis situation. I know that. But if Sony can find a way to really bring Miles Morales to the forefront the way they did, even though it's a very different circumstance from the Batman Beyond Terry McGinnis situation, I think, anecdotally at least, I think that's got to make some people at Warner Brothers go, maybe there's a way we could do this. Maybe. I still don't think the chances are good, but I think the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse situation upped their odds. Even if I still think the odds are low, I think Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse upped the odds. And it'll be interesting to see where things go from here. You never know, man. I mean, there are rumors, unfounded rumors, but there are rumors going around that, Michael Keaton could specifically be for a Batman Beyond project. I mean, it's for Flashpoint, but maybe they'll expand that. I mean, look, there's a lot of possibilities. There are a lot of possibilities. But you trying to compare a 3-season run of one of 100 Superman iterations compared to a 3-season one of Batman Beyond, again, there's no comparison. You cannot try to compare those and think you're doing some kind of an equation. It's a completely different situation. But that's just my opinion on that. So let's see where things go. All right. Next up, Ben Rayner writes, "Hey, John, happy Wednesday morning." Well, thank you so much, Ben. Have you seen the trailer for the Jessica Chastain, you probably mean Jessica Chastain, the Jessica Chastain Colin Farrell movie Ava? I have, and it's great. I don't know if the movie's going to be good, but the trailer was great. It looks so fun and badass, kind of like a new John Wick. John Malkovich is also in it. Didn't know anything about the movie, and now I am pumped. Yeah, well, and you guys know, if you've watched me for any period of time, I'm also a big Colin Farrell fan. I think Colin Farrell is a tremendously underrated actor. He's fabulous. And I love seeing him in just about anything, including drama, period piece. I don't care if it's in Saving Mr. Banks. I don't care if he's the bad guy in Daredevil. He's great. I love Colin Farrell. I thought the trailer was great. I will say this, though. I thought the trailer basically told you the whole movie. Now, I'm usually one of these guys when people say the trailer gave everything away. I'm like, come on, guys. It probably didn't. You're just making that guess. For all we know, everything we saw in the trailer happened in the first 5 minutes. But even I got to say, I felt like I just watched the whole movie. Like when I watched that trailer for Ava, it does look great. But man, as Colin Farrell's crawling away, says, "Get extra security on my family." I'm like, okay, that's clearly one of the end of the third act of the movie. It's like, I just felt like I watched the whole thing. I felt like they gave every twist away. Now, maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't. I hope they didn't, because the trailer does look really good, and I'm looking forward to watching the movie. But yeah, it did feel like they gave an awful lot of it away. All right. Jordan Genovese writes, "Hey, John, so hear me out. The Flash Season 8, which is most likely going to happen based off of Grant's recent comments, will end May of 2022 like it normally does. Flashpoint is released June 2022. Am I thinking too far into this, or am I onto something? Anything's possible. The reason I would say it's probably more coincidental than anything else is because Greg Berlanti, who kind of is doing a lot with DC, and he kind of was the architect of the Arrowverse, he told the story about how, like, even that one little, that cameo of Ezra Miller as Flash in the Crisis crossover event was kind of something that came together. It was kind of random. Like with, Warner was like, hey, why don't we drop this in there? Keep the Flash movie in people's minds, considering it's been delayed so much, blah, blah, blah. So when you read Greg Berlanti's account of it, it doesn't sound like it was a well-orchestrated, intricately planned out thing to pave the way for something else later, right? At least the way Greg Berlanti tells the story. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. It could. I mean, I don't see a lot of benefit in them trying to tie in their Arrowverse television series stuff into the movie universe. Now, you can say they already did it with that Ezra cameo, but that was just a fun little thing they did. I never thought that should have been taken very seriously. Even Greg Berlanti, the way he tells the story doesn't sound like it. But, I mean, hey, it's not ridiculous to consider the possibilities, considering one is maybe ending in May, and then the next one comes out like 1 month later. I don't think it means anything, but you at least got to consider the possibility. It's possible. They could. It's something we should keep our eyes on. I'm not expecting it to be connected, but you can't discount. You can't discount it. It might be. Again, it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show. It's about, where is the DCEU going from here? And that's a big question mark right now. Could they go? Are they going to go from the very stable, successful ground of really focusing on each individual standalone film, making big money, getting big critic reviews, winning Academy Awards, all that kind of stuff, to making it more like an extension of the Arrowverse? Maybe. And maybe they have even bigger plans beyond that. So I don't know. Let's put it this way. I don't think so. But I totally don't think it's wacky to consider the possibility, considering the timing of it. It's not wacky. So let's see where that goes, Jordan. All right, next up. Man of Steel rules. It certainly does. Writes, hey, John, the thinking by a lot of people was that Avatar 2 would break Endgame's record. Oh, I know. I've never understood why. I don't see that happening at all. I honestly, what's going to break Endgame's record? Avatar 1, when Disney re-releases it. mark my words, when Disney re-releases Avatar 1, it will be the number one box office movie in the world again. And then Disney will re-release Endgame at some point, and then it will become the number one box office film of all time again. And it's going to be this little Disney game of hopscotch that Disney does with their movies. Anyway, a lot of people was that Avatar 2 would break Endgame's record. I honestly can't see that happening due to the circumstances that will have an impact for a prolonged period of time. Your thoughts? Thanks. Well, listen, no, I've never thought Avatar 2 could break Avatar 1's record, now Endgame's record. I never thought that it could. I think it's going to be stupid successful. I think it's going to make a lot of money because it's James Cameron. Never bet against James Cameron. Ever. But if Avatar 2 had come out 3 years after the first Avatar, yeah, maybe. 4 years, maybe. 5 years, maybe. But we are so far removed now, and Avatar has so lost its place in the pop cultural consciousness. Now, granted, the first Avatar came out of nowhere, right? The first Avatar, think about this. In an age when movies can make like up to $200 million in opening weekend, right? Avatar, which was the number one box office movie in the world for nearly a decade, only opened to $70 million. I'm not even sure if it was number one the weekend it opened, but at any rate, right? And it just caught on and got massive legs and caught the imaginations of everybody, and on it went. And it's a great movie. Got nominated for Best Picture. It's a great movie. And it set the all-time box office record and held that record for nearly a decade. And that record didn't get beat until a movie came along that needed 35 major A-list Hollywood stars, 10-year build-up, 21 movies coming in before it, all building it up, and then it barely beat Avatar. That's how impressive that Avatar record is. But, I think this new Avatar will absolutely be a billion-dollar film, maybe even a $2 billion film, but I just never thought it could be a $2.8 billion film. You know what I mean? I just don't see that I don't see history repeating itself that way. And that has nothing to do with COVID-19 or the changing theatrical landscape. It's just, as a movie, I don't see it doing that. Big success? Absolutely. New record breaking? I doubt it. Anything is possible, but I'm just saying, as of right now, I doubt it. But who knows? Maybe after we see the first Avatar trailer or the first trailer for Avatar 2, we'll all be singing a different song. Maybe we'll all be like, oh yeah, that one's going to break the record. Who knows? But we'll have to wait and see. All right, next up. Superman Rules also writes, hey, John, I was fortunate to see Man of Steel opening night, and I absolutely loved it. Me too, brother. I left the theater with high expectations of seeing Fedora again at some point due to her charisma and how hard the actress worked and prepped for the role. Will she be back? I doubt it. I do like, I just watched the movie again. Well, I watch it every year. I watch Man of Steel every year. I just watched it again previously to doing my editorial that's up on my YouTube channel right now called The Case for Man of Steel, the most underrated superhero film of all time. So I watched it again. And yeah, I really do like that character a lot. I don't see them bringing her back, though. I don't see them bringing her back. Let's be clear. I would be excited if they did. But I don't think they will. So no, I just don't see where you can go narrative. I think him battling Kryptonians has been done. So now they need to move on to something else. If J.J. Abrams does get a true Man of Steel 2 going again, which, from what I'm hearing, that is what's going to happen at some point, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 years down the line, J.J. Abrams is going to do another Superman movie with Henry Cavill. I believe that. I don't know that for 100% fact, but I believe that. But when he does, I don't think it's going to be, let's battle Kryptonians again. I don't think they're going to do that. So again, I'll be interested if they do, but I just don't think that's the direction they're going to go. All right, an anonymous viewer writes, one of two. Read a paper from a group of scientists expressing concern about theaters reopening because of concessions. They're saying even if people wear their masks 80% of the time between bites, it's practically the same as if they came with no mask at all. Well, actually, that's not true. I know that's been proven to not be true. Someone with the virus taking off, even briefly, in a room with that little air circulations means it is now floating around that room where people are sitting stationary for hours. I feel like it's a small sacrifice we should make to forego concessions. Well, okay, so there's a couple things to keep in mind here. Number one, you are much closer proximity and in a much smaller room going into a restaurant, right? People are going into restaurants. My wife and I went to a restaurant last night. They took our temperature. They required everybody to be wearing masks when they're not sitting at their table. They took our temperatures before we went in. Every table was at least 6 feet separated from other people, and everybody was sitting there without a mask as they're sitting at their table 6 feet apart. You got to remember, the Utah Jazz, one of the players on the NBA's Utah Jazz, they found out that he had coronavirus, right? He had spent 2 weeks with the coronavirus being in the same locker room with his teammates, practicing, being involved in practices, doing press stuff with his teammates, hanging out with his teammates afterwards. And according to all the official reports, only one other member of the Jazz got it as well. Only one. And that was with 2 weeks of being in the same locker room, blah, blah, blah. It's, from everything we've seen, COVID is not just, if I walk through a room that somebody else walked through a room and I'm going to catch it just like that. It's clearly not like that. If people are smart and intelligent and do things the right way, which many people in the United States are not, but if they did, we would have this thing under control right now. So anyway, my thought is, if you can go into a restaurant or into a grocery store or all that kind of stuff, then if you're in a much bigger movie theater with much higher ceilings, with the air constantly being circulated, because remember, all movie theaters have their air constantly being circulated, then I think that, is it zero risk? No, there's nothing you can do short of wearing a hazmat suit to make it zero risk. There's nothing you can do short of a hazmat suit to make it zero risk. But there are things you can do to minimize the risk. Every time you walk outside the door, you're at risk. The question is, are you at minimal risk or maximum risk? And I personally think that, going into a movie theater with its super high ceilings, being seated 5-6 feet apart from other people, where everybody's wearing their mask most of the time, I believe that is a minimal risk situation. Zero risk? No. But it's a much smaller risk than being in a restaurant. I think it's a much smaller risk than being in a grocery store, right? And yet, if you handle those situations well, and again, remember, I'm no doctor. I am no doctor. So take my point of view on the spread of the coronavirus as what it is. Some idiot without a PhD just given his random opinion. So take it at that. But this idiot with no PhD in his random opinion is that all the circumstantial stuff I see about, hey, if you act properly, if you do things right, if you can be in these rooms if you're minimizing the risk, then we're minimizing the risk. So that's my thought on it, at any rate. That's my thought on it. Others will feel differently. Let's see how this thing evolves. But all I know is that I look out in the world today and I see a lot of people not even taking the minimal safety precautions. And that's infuriating because we're seeing other countries around the world that have kicked this thing's ass. And here, it's just getting worse because here is the place that people don't even want to do the minimum amount. People here don't even want to do the minimum amount, use the minimum required amount of common sense to make things safer for themselves and safer for the people around them. And that's why now I'm not even sure that the theaters are going to reopen anytime soon. I hope they do, but I'm not sure that they will. So I don't know, man. It's an interesting, complicated situation and topic that has clearly been the dominant thing in the world of movies for the last little while, and we'll see how it continues to go. All right, let's keep moving on here. Next up, Joshua Levesque writes, hey, John, on Open Mic, I saw that you will return to Twitter in 3 to 6 months. I'm thinking about it, yeah. However, you might want to reactivate your account for a day and then deactivate it again because it's deactivated for 30 days or longer. It'll get deleted. Just a heads up. That's not true. It's very specifically, I have 12 months. So for those of you who know, so I had talked for a couple of weeks on my show about, you know what, I'm thinking about just getting rid of my Twitter. because it's just an awful, ugly cesspool. Nothing good comes out of Twitter. And I thought about, and I saw some situations, that Rob got himself into and all these other things. I'm like, you know what? No, I'm just seeing people acting like assholes, and I don't know that I want to be on it anymore. So I did. I disabled my Twitter. And I haven't missed it. I haven't missed it at all. But I didn't delete it because I'm like, maybe in 3 to 6 months, maybe I'll want to bring it back. So yeah, but no, I have 12 months. Actually, when I disabled it, it gave me a specific option. Do I want to have a 6-month limit or a 12-month limit? And I selected the 12-month limit. So yeah, so I might bring it back. I might bring it back in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. Who knows? We'll see. But as far as I can tell, no, it's totally safe where it is right now. All right, Brandon writes, Fortnite has a mode which features a movie screen inside the game. Yes, it does. On June 26th at 8 p.m., they will be playing Inception on the screen for free. Nolan loves the theater experience so much that even when they're closed, he puts his films on digital theaters. Yeah, I remember I read about that. I don't know what the deal. Well, look, obviously Fortnite is one of the most popular games in the world. And there's a lot of people playing Fortnite. So Fortnite has actually been the place where some trailers have dropped. Hell, even the Emperor's menacing message that he sent out to the universe to warn them about his return, that was broadcast in Fortnite. Not on YouTube, not on Twitch, it was broadcast on Fortnite is where they broadcast it. It's kind of becoming a place where you can do that. Anyway, playing to that, yeah, for those you didn't hear, they've announced that Christopher Nolan's Inception is going to be played on a screen in Fortnite. So you can be in Fortnite, and it's an interesting idea. I don't mind. I mean, I don't play Fortnite. I mean, I've played Fortnite. Oh my God, I was bad. Oh, I'm so bad at Fortnite. I mean, I played about 30 games of Fortnite. I don't think I ever did worse than getting in the top 20. But I think in all of those 20 or 30 games, I think I killed one person. I just always survived until I got into the top 3 once. But I never killed a single person. I was so bad at it. So anyway, I don't play Fortnite anymore. But I mean, a lot of people play it. It's super popular. So if they're there and you can do something kind of fun like this, obviously it's a big play to drum up hype for Tenet. Why not? It's a really neat idea. I like the idea. All right, next up. John Morgan writes, Hey, John, I just rewatched Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest, one of my favorites. I didn't like Dead Man's Chest so much, but it's one of the better ones. It's one of the better ones. And it got me thinking, do you think the lack of other pirate movies could be because of the success of Pirates of the Caribbean, similar to your thoughts on the lack of fantasy movies because of Lord of the Rings? Almost like someone has already done it so well, so successfully, why try it again? No, I don't think so. Because there's a couple things taken into consideration. It's not like there were a bunch of pirate movies before Pirates of the Caribbean. It's not like we were getting a new pirate movie, like 2 new pirate movies a year before Pirates of the Caribbean. And it's not like there had been a big demand for pirate themed movies. Unlike Lord of the Rings, where there's a lot of demand for sword and sandal and sorcery kind of movies, but there was never like a big call and demand for pirates movies. The other big thing is this, whereas Lord of the Rings, all 3 films were all nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, critically loved, considered amongst the all-time greatest movies. Pirates of the Caribbean, the first movie, is great. I was so pleasantly surprised by the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I love that movie. I haven't loved any of the rest of them. And so they're not really considered the big all-time classics that say Lord of the Rings are. So here's the thing. The question is, would there have been more pirate-themed movies had Pirates of the Caribbean not come out? I don't know. I don't see anything that really... I mean, the last pirate movie I remember was Cutthroat Island. When the hell did Cutthroat Island come out? I can't remember. I really can't remember very much at all. Let me just... let me try that again. I'm just typing something to the people watching on Twitch. I just think this is so cool that I'm actually on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube at the same time. Anyway, back to it. I don't know that there was going to be like a lot of pirate movies anyway. And like I said, the last one I remember is Cutthroat Island. So Yeah, I'm going to guess no, John, although I do love that first one. But they've never, in my opinion, and it's all subjective, in my opinion, they have never come close to the quality of the first one. But that's just me. You obviously like The Dead Man's Chest the most. So, I mean, that's great. It's all subjective. But for me and my money, they've never been able to come close to the quality of the first one. Okay, let's move on here. Luke1234 writes, who did you like better, Ben as Batman or Henry as Superman? FYI, I'm getting the vibe the DCEU will just become all multiverse now, where continuity doesn't matter and everything is Elseworld. I mean, it's possible, man. That's a tough question because both Ben as Batman and Henry as Superman are my two favorite iterations of those characters. Ben is my favorite iteration of Batman. Henry's my favorite iteration of Superman. Which one do I like better? I don't know. That's a coin toss. You know what? For now, I'll say maybe Henry is Superman, but I might give you a totally different answer tomorrow. The only reason I'll say Henry is Superman is because I have loved his consistent iteration of Superman through the movies he was in. Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Justice League. It was a very consistent iteration of who that Superman was. Whereas they kind of changed Ben's Batman from Man of Steel going into Justice League. They kind of, and I wasn't as big of a fan of their iteration of Batman in Justice League as I was in Batman versus Superman. So because of that, today I will say Henry Cavill is Superman, but I reserve the right to give you a totally different answer tomorrow, right? Totally depends on the mood I'm in that day. All right, next up, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Joshua Anonymous. No, it looks like we're good. Okay. Who is that? This is Luke1234. Next up, Captain Canuck writes, if you could become like Data in Star Trek with no anger, sadness, fear, insecurity, and other uncomfortable emotions, but this meant not feeling or experiencing love, happiness, enjoyment, or excited anticipation, would you take the trade to avoid pain? No, not at all. Pain is the great teacher, right? To paraphrase Yoda, I mean, where failure is the great teacher, but yeah, failure, which is kind of part and parcel with pain. Failure is the great teacher. Pain is a great teacher. And it's pain that allows you to appreciate joy. You don't know. It's coming out of the hardest parts of your life that you appreciate the great parts of your life. Now, this is me now waxing poetic, but no, I would definitely take having the human emotions, because there's no happiness without sadness. There's no joy without grief. And it is all part of our human experience. So nope. I would rather take what Data aspired to rather than take what Data was. So that's my kind of take on it. Interesting, deep question, Captain Canuck. All right, next up. We got Ari A, who writes, and send in like a $20 tip. Thank you so much, Ari, for supporting the channel on that level, man. And because it's a $20 thing, this question will be segmented out into its own standalone video over the next couple of weeks. Keep your eyes open for that. Anyway, hey, John. A lot happening in DC. Snyder Cut, Keaton, the Phantom event, crossover between TV and movie universe, maybe. New TV shows, etc. Do you think they are all part of one big plan, or each project is standalone? Thanks and keep it up. I mean, that's the big question mark right now, right? What is the plan? What are they doing? Are they adopting a Fox X-Men continuity schmontinuity approach? Maybe. I mean, it did work for Fox's X-Men to a great degree. So maybe they are. Maybe they're just all interweaving the Arrowverse now with the movies and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it can work. I am skeptical about that working. I think that would be a bad move. I think there's a reason why not many people watch Arrowverse compared to how many watch other television programming. But it could work. It could work out really well. Maybe not. I mean, so it's so hard to guess right now on a couple of rumors. Look, we know that Michael Keaton is in talks, but the rap says it's far from a done deal. So we don't even know if that's happening. And all of this kind of speculation is really coming on that one bit of news. And so it's really hard for me to try to articulate where I think everything is going to go in the future based on one, as of yet, not solidified report. It is a report talking about Keaton possibly coming back as Batman. It is a report that has long-reaching ramifications, but it's hard to, pontificate too far ahead just based on one thing. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. And then we'll have to see what kind of approach they take if they do that. So it's all up in the air right now, Ari. It's all right up in the air right now. And it's the billion-dollar question. I mean, and look, there are several smaller questions that need to be answered first. Number one, what exactly is the role of the Robert Pattinson Batman? Is it like Joker, where it's totally in his own standalone universe, completely separate from the DCEU? Is it somewhat connected to the DCEU? Is he supposed to be a younger version of the Ben Affleck Batman? These are all questions where we've all heard certain things, but nothing's been really solidified or given official confirmation. So there are so many little questions that need to be answered before we really get a clear picture, but we'll watch with a lot of anticipation. Ari. Again, man, thanks for supporting the channel on that level, man. I really appreciate that. All right. Darth Wayne writes, yesterday, theaters finally reopened in Sweden. That's awesome. And me and my brother went to go watch Empire Strikes Back as our first movie. That is awesome. It was probably your first time getting to see that movie on the big screen, too. Epic night. Felt so amazing being back in the theater. This weekend, we're going to go back to watch The Dark Knight and Inception. Oh, dude, you have filled your dance card, man. You have filled your dance card with a lot of really, really good stuff. I mean, that is truly, truly awesome to hear. That is awesome to hear. And I'm so glad you were able to go and check out the theaters and see movies in there and see things on the big screen. Again, one of the silver linings of this whole situation, it doesn't make it okay, but it's at least a little bit of a silver lining. One of the small silver linings of this whole situation is the fact that, we are going to get a chance to see some movies on the big screen again that maybe we thought we'd never get to see on the big screen again. The big screen, the real way to watch a movie. The real way to watch a movie the way it was intended to be experienced on the big screen in a movie theater. A lot of us have, there are a lot of great movies, and I'm going to guess that you guys never had a chance to watch Empire on the big screen again. So that is exciting and awesome. And again, Sweden, one of the countries that did it right. I mean, they managed to kick its ass, so good on you guys, and I hope you're able to keep your theaters open. All right. Jordan Genovese writes, did you hear that this year, instead of a major Arrowverse crossover, only Batwoman and Superman will cross over due to the HBO Max deal for just those two shows? I know you hate how Superman is treated and stopped watching Batwoman. What are your thoughts? No thoughts. Somebody else asked me that an identical question to that just a couple weeks ago, Jordan. They asked me, what do you think about the crossover plans this year? I have no opinion. I stopped watching Batwoman just because I watched the first 3 episodes and it wasn't for me. That's all. If you watch it and enjoy it, that is awesome. I celebrate that. But it just wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy it. Even though I had some enthusiasm going into it. I liked her role in the Arrowverse crossover prior to the season starting. But yeah, just didn't work for me. And of course, I hate their iteration of Superman. I hate what they've done to that Superman. I have no interest in it. Not to mention, it's really weird that even though I thought Arrow crapped the pants in season 3, Arrow, I thought, was one of the greatest shows on television for the first season, the second season, and even half of the third season. Then I thought they totally crapped the bed. But then they became a little bit hit and miss. Like, a lot of it still ended up being useless, but some of it was actually really good. So it was a little bit hit and miss, but I didn't realize how much Stephen Amell playing Arrow meant to me for my enjoyment of the Arrowverse overall. Because if I remember, somebody asked me as we were getting close to the Arrow finale, somebody asked me on the show, is this going to hurt your overall enjoyment with Arrow being gone and Stephen Amell as kind of the centerpiece of the Arrowverse being gone? Is that going to hurt your enjoyment of the other DC or the other CW shows that you enjoy? And I said, no. I mean, Stephen Amell's Arrow has kind of been hit and miss a little bit over the past number. I used to love it. I still love Stephen Amell as Arrow. I still love him as Arrow, but the show itself, blah, blah, so no, it'll still be fine. I'll love everything just as much as I do. But I was wrong. When Arrow ended, almost immediately, I had lost almost all of my enthusiasm for the Arrowverse. I'm not saying it's right or wrong that I felt that way. I'm just saying I wasn't expecting that. I was not expecting to suddenly have a change in how much I did or did not enjoy the Arrowverse without Stephen Amell as Arrow in that verse, right? And it affected it a lot. And I like this season of Flash. I did. I like this season of Flash. But I found even some of my normal enthusiasm for Flash was a little bit gone because I knew that in this Arrowverse, that Oliver Queen character was no longer there at the heart of it. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm not saying I should feel that way or shouldn't feel that way. I'm just saying it had an effect on me that I wasn't anticipating. So anyway, when you take all of that combined, the fact that I don't watch Batwoman, the fact that I hate the CW's iteration of Superman, the fact that I've lost some of my passion for the Arrowverse since the end of Arrow, and the fact of the matter is that I thought Crisis was garbage. I have loved every single Arrowverse crossover event every year, some more than others. I thought Crisis was absolute garbage. Crisis on Earth X was awesome. Crisis on Infinite Earths was garbage, in my opinion. Some of you guys loved it, and that's awesome. But for me, it was garbage. So when you combine all of those things into one kind of mix, it leaves me having no thoughts. I don't care. I don't care. I'm not saying it's not going to be great. It might be great. I'm just saying as of right now, in this moment, I have zero enthusiasm for it. That could change. That could change. I mean, right now, they have to go get a new Batwoman to start off with because they don't have Ruby Rose anymore. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes, Jordan. All right. Next up, John McKinney writes, 1 of 3. Another straw man argument that annoys me is when someone gives a movie an A+ or a 10 out of 10. When someone disagrees with you, they say you're overlooking the movie's flaws. A good example is one time I gave my favorite Disney movie, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and my favorite Star Wars movie, Return of the Jedi. I gave them A+. Yes, I do like the gargoyles and the Ewoks. 3 of 3. Hunchback of Notre Dame has major issues and Return of the Jedi has no issues. I had people strawman me saying, you're overlooking the film's flaws. Nothing about the films bothered me. It's just that simple. No, it's true. And here's the other thing. When somebody says to me, you're overlooking the flaws, I'd simply say to them this, no, there are things that you consider flaws, right? There are things that you consider flaws. I'm not looking over any flaws. I am telling you what my experience with the film was. My experience with the film was that it was a 10 out of 10. That doesn't mean it was perfect. 10 out of 10 doesn't mean absolute perfection. But you guys know me. I'm very stingy at giving out 10 out of 10s. I've only given out like 7, 8, or 9 10 out of 10s in my life. That doesn't mean I think the movies I gave 10 out of 10s are perfect. But at any rate, whenever somebody says to you, you're overlooking his flaws, no, just say to them, like, no, I'm just not considering the things you considered flaws to be flaws. Just like there are movies that you love that I might think has a few flaws in them that you would just disagree with me that those elements that I think are flaws, you don't think they are. And that's perfectly fair. It's all subjective. So look, somebody can come to me and say they give, Assassin's Creed a 10 out of 10. Awesome. I mean, I completely disagree. I thought the movie was horrendous, a steaming pile of shit. I thought the movie was terrible, but I know it's all subjective. And if the movie hit you in such a way that you thought it was a 10 out of 10, we can have a discussion about the things, certain points of the story that we liked or didn't like, and what I thought worked and maybe you thought didn't, or vice versa. We can have that discussion and have a lot of fun, and we can disagree, and I can think you're crazy and you can think I'm crazy. But at the end of the day, I respect that, hey, you liked it and you loved it. Good on you. I'm glad you loved it. I'm glad somebody got some enjoyment out of it, because I didn't. But yeah, if anybody were to ever say to me, you're ignoring its flaws. Okay, then you push them. Okay, what flaws? This was a flaw. Well, I didn't think that was a flaw. I thought that was a strength, right? So yeah, that's what I would say back. If you ever get that again, that would be my response, McKinney. That would totally be my response. Again, another sign about a good sign about somebody who doesn't understand the subjectivity of film. There are certain things somebody can say that I can just go in my head. Oh, I now realize there's no point even discussing this with you because you don't understand the subjectivity of film. And I just check out. And that would be one of those lines. If somebody says that to me, then in my mind, I'm like, okay, I can check out of this conversation because they clearly don't understand that film is subjective. So there's no point in even having the discussion with them. But that's kind of my take on it. All right. Let's see. Next up, Henri Martens writes, finally watching The Office. Good on you. But I'm surprised Dinner Party and Scott's Tots are fan favorites. Well written, but not laugh out loud funny in my opinion. Oh, to me they are. To me they are. I'm almost exhausted at the end of those episodes. I'm physically exhausted after watching those episodes. But again, it's not going to hit everybody the same way. Did I stutter? Booze Cruise. Booze Cruise was so funny. Gay Witch Hunt and Company Picnic, on the other hand, had me howling thoughts. I mean, those are all great episodes. You'd be hard-pressed to point out many episodes of The Office to me that I didn't think were great episodes. And those were great. I do consider Scott's Tots and Dinner Party to be the two probably best. Those, I would actually say there are three that I consider the best in any particular order. And those would be Scott's Tots, Dinner Party, and Murder Mystery. I can't remember if that's the name of the episode, but when they had the Murder Mystery night, we're in Savannah, Voodoo Mama Juju. Oh my God, the fact that they made Angela a character called Voodoo Mama Juju. Anyway, those to me are the three greatest Office episodes ever. Jim and Pam's wedding episode was actually pretty dang good, but I'll stick with those three. For now, but I'm just glad you're enjoying the series, Henri. Good on you, man. All right, next up, John McKinney writes, one of three. Another straw man argument that annoys me is when, John was so passionate about this, he wrote it in twice, or the system just kind of glitched and gave me a little bit of a repeat there. All right, Ryan Lohner writes, I've just been rewatching the whole MCU, and I realized everyone made such a big deal about Lawrence Fishburne being both in Marvel and the DC movies. Not really. But no one seems to care that The Warriors 3 is also in Shazam. Yeah, so Zach Levi... Well, remember, Zach Levi kind of slipped into playing that role. Was it Thandril? Was that his name? Yeah, one of the Warriors 3 in Thor. But he wasn't the original guy to do it. Like, there was another actor who played that role in the first Thor. Then he slipped in and played it, and it wasn't a very big role, but he slipped in and played it in Thor 2. And then he appears for a second in Thor Ragnarok just to die. I don't even think he had a line of dialogue. He just kind of appears and he dies. So there was that. Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, I remember some people go, wow, he's Perry White and he's going to be in Ant-Man. There's a little bit of that, but I honestly don't remember it being made that big of a deal. What was made a big deal, though, at the time was that Lawrence Fishburne made some negative comments about DC when he went over into the MCU that I don't think were appropriate for him to make, but whatever. I love Lawrence Fishburne, or Larry as people call him. I love him, and that's fine. And I think that got more attention than just the fact that he was in both Marvel and DC. And of course, now we're about to have Michael Keaton again. Michael Keaton was like the original DC guy. And then of course he's in Marvel as well, and might be in Morbius here. I mean, he is in Morbius. We saw him in the trailer. So yeah, it happens a lot. And don't forget, like Chris Evans. Chris Evans was in the Fox universe for a while when he was Johnny Storm. Then he came over into the Marvel, Disney Marvel movies. So there was that. And then wasn't Idris Elba in a DC movie? I'm trying to remember. I'm freezing on at the moment. Anyway, yeah, happens. But I don't remember it being that big of a deal to people when Lawrence Fishburne was in both. What was a bigger deal was the comments that he made while it was going on. So that could have been the bigger story. All right. Ethan Holgate writes, hey, John, I know you're not the biggest fan of DC and Marvel animated movies. Yeah, I'm not. But I love Lionsgate Marvel animated movies, such as Hulk vs. Wolverine, The Next Avengers, Heroes of Tomorrow, and many others. I think they're very well done. Have you seen any that you like? Nope. I think I saw just because it was one night I was going through my streaming stuff and I think I came across Hulk versus Wolverine, I think, but I don't even remember it, which should tell you how much of an impact it made on me. So no, I've got no interest. Again, look, I'm a big fan of DC and I'm a big fan of Marvel, but I have not been a big fan, with some exceptions, of their direct-to-home video animated movies. Not at all. Like even their last one, Apocalypse, Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, I thought that was terrible. I thought it was awful. But again, there are going to be people who watch it and like it, and that's great. I'm glad that those are there for that audience. That's awesome. But yeah, I mean, again, there are some exceptions. The Doctor Strange movie I thought was quite good. The Doctor Strange animated movie I thought was quite good. I thought, obviously, the Dark Knight Returns was quite good. I thought Under the Red Hood was quite good. So there are some that I think are okay. But yeah, for the most part, I'm not a fan of either Marvel or DC and their direct-to-home video animated stuff. I usually end up giving it a try, and I usually regret that I gave it a try. Again, some exceptions, but that's just me. All right, next up. Ethan Holgate writes, "Hey John, I know you don't care about which actor plays which role, but is just curiosity. Do you think Johnny Depp could play Michael Jackson in a biopic?" Okay, obviously you're being facetious. Also, R.I.P. Joel Schumacher. My favorites of his are The Lost Boys, DC Cab, Flatliners, and Falling. Did he do DC Cab? Honestly, I didn't know that. Hold on a second. DC, the one with Mr. T, right? Okay, I mean, that came out when I was a kid. It was, I never knew that Joel Schumacher directed DC Cab. It was one of the first movies. I remember my dad, he was in a bowling league. Okay, what does that have to do with DC Cab? Okay, hear me out. So my dad was in a bowling league, and at the bowling alley, they also had a video rental center. I don't know why, but they did in the bowling alley, where you could rent a VCR and a couple of movies, or a Laserdisc player and a couple of movies. Yes, a Laserdisc player. And I remember it was one of the first times my dad ever rented it, and my dad rented a Laserdisc player, and he got 2 movies, both of which I bet you've never seen. One is this one, DC Cab, with Mr. T. Who was the other stars in that? Adam Baldwin. That's right. Adam Baldwin was in that. Gary Busey was in that. Bill Maher was in that. Oh my gosh. It was a big, yeah, but Mr. T was on Mr. T was on the poster, and like he was the top billed name, but he really wasn't in the movie all that much. But anyway, one was DC Cab, and the other was the Dan Aykroyd classic, Dr. Detroit, starring Dan Aykroyd. And I think the nanny was in there too. Donna Dixon Lee. Maybe it was. Yeah, no, it was. Fran Drescher. That's right. The nanny was in that as well. And I'm sure probably many of you have never seen the Dan Aykroyd classic. You can see the score. Classic. Dr. Detroit. But yeah, man, those are the first 2 movies I think my dad rented. Those are the first 2 movies I think I remember my dad renting. And I was very much a kid. But yeah, I mean, there's that. Anyway. So Joel Schumacher. Yeah, we talked about this the other day. It is unfortunate that when people think of Joel Schumacher, all they think of are those Batman movies. He did a lot of great movies. But man, I learned something new every day here, Ethan. I had no idea that he did DC Cab. I had no idea about that. So thank you for giving me that little education there. I love it. All right, next up. Dave Atkins writes, thoughts on the PS5 console reveal in general. I personally really dig the design and had a range of eclectic games that really enticed me. I'll be honest with you. I thought it was mediocre. To me, I mean, obviously the Miles Morales Spider-Man game was exciting. There were a couple other things that looked really intriguing, but overall, I'll be honest with you, kind of lackluster. And the fact that they didn't do a price reveal, I thought was really bad form. to talk about blah, blah, blah. Oh, but we're not going to tell you how much it costs. Well, that's kind of the whole, we can't have a notion about whether this PS5 is a good value or not until you tell us what the price is. How do you do a whole presentation on the PS5 and then not tell people what the price point is? Like, I thought that was bad form on their part. I really did. I thought that was bad form. So I thought they should have done that, but they didn't. And it is what it is. So yeah, I thought it was a little bit lackluster. Some interesting things, some not so interesting things. I didn't feel particularly charged up after watching it. Now, I currently have a PS4 Pro, and I will probably buy the PS5 when it comes out. But again, I just didn't have any, I didn't find it to be all that exciting. Look, you do, what is it that I'm, oh, I froze on it. I froze on it for a second. Anyway, didn't really get me all that hyped. Again, a couple of highlight moments, but just overall I thought, okay, it's coming. We'll see what happens when it comes out. Tyler Yates writes, "Hey, John, have you seen or heard of this movie called The Lodge?" Oh, yes, I have. As a matter of fact, you know what's funny? Hold on a second. I was just looking up The Lodge. I kid you not. Seriously. I was just looking up The Lodge earlier today. I was looking up The Lodge earlier today because I couldn't remember the name of the girl who is the lead in it. And I was talking to somebody else about The Lodge, and I was just looking this up earlier today. So the girl who's the lead in it is actually Elvis Presley's granddaughter. But nobody knows that because she doesn't go by the name. And I couldn't remember her name. Her name is Riley Keough. Keough. Keough? I'm not really sure. But she is actually Elvis Presley's granddaughter. And anyway, so let's get back to the question. What was the question here? Hey, John, have you seen or heard of this movie called The Lodge? I've heard it's similar to Hereditary. Yeah, it's a little bit more horror than Hereditary is, to be honest, and Hereditary is better. I think I might check it out. It's on Hulu. I think it's worth checking out. And by the way, it's also got Richard Armitage in it, who was in the Hobbit movies. It's also got Alicia Silverstone in it, because we were just talking about Clueless the other day. It's got Alicia Silverstone in it. But yeah, the lead girl in it is actually Elvis Presley's granddaughter. And I think it's on purpose that she goes by that different name and doesn't put Presley in her name, because I had no idea. She's been in a couple of other things too. I never knew she was Elvis Presley's granddaughter until I saw this. So anyway, there's that. All right, next up. Dave Akins writes, "A comeback I would love to see is the resurgence of arcade games." Oh, I love arcades. In the West, I remember seeing Daytona USA for the first time in 1995 with its smooth 3D visuals and texture filtering when I was still privy to 2D sprites on consoles and being blown away. You know, honestly, arcades have been making kind of a resurgence. There are a couple of places in LA. Actually, even on New Year's Eve, we did some bar hopping on New Year's Eve, but one of the places that we landed at was this bar arcade where they have like 40 different arcade games in there, and you don't even have to pay for them. They're just free to play. And there's a number of places in Los Angeles that are arcades. You go there, they're a bar and an arcade, and they're a lot of fun. I still love going. I remember when I was a kid, man, I would go to Lime Ridge Mall in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And there are some of you watching this who might actually live in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And you go to Lime Ridge Mall and you probably never even knew there used to be a big arcade. Right down where the food court is in Lime Ridge Mall, there used to be a big arcade. Right beside movie theaters. Yes, there used to be movie theaters in the Lime Ridge Mall. Only 4 screens. It was a Famous Players cinema. 4 screens. Right beside an arcade. And as a kid, I used to go to Lime Ridge Mall all the time just to play in the arcade, man. So yeah, arcades, tons of fun. And they are kind of making a comeback. These bar arcade things are becoming kind of popular in LA. So I hope they continue to be really popular. Let's see. Bolt the Bird writes, over under 10%. There is a big name surprise casting in Tenet like with Matt Damon and Interstellar. I go over 10%. I'll go over 10%. I think Christopher Nolan got a big kick out of doing that. He didn't do it for like Dunkirk per se, but I think he got a big kick out of doing stuff like that. I wouldn't say 50%. I won't say there's a 50% chance, but I will say Over 10%? Yeah. Yeah, I'll give it that it'll be over 10% that happens. I think that's a good bet. All right, Alpha O writes, does art cease to belong to only its creator once it's out for the world to consume? No. Lately, we've seen franchises where creators made fans fall in love with their art initially, but struggled to deliver overall satisfaction with the next installments. Well, that's happened forever. Like, you go back to any sequel in history, that's always been the case. It's always been the case. That's not a new thing. That's been around forever. Anyway, should creators keep in mind the established relationship fans now have with the story and characters when making the next stories, or shouldn't they? I myself don't know what to think, but it is really a clear-cut answer when money is involved. Oh, it's simple. Artists should do what artists do. A computer can make up, you can get mathematical formulas that just make up what you do with the part 2 of a story if you want. The creators should do what the creators want to do. The creators should follow their own vision. Period. End of sentence. That's it. And it should succeed or fail based on that. It doesn't always succeed, but it needs to succeed or fail based on that. You know, a lot of the problems with the Transformers sequels was that you could tell Michael Bay was trying to react to a lot of the fan feedback, and it just didn't work. Not that they would have been great if he didn't. I'm just saying they worked. The Rise of Skywalker was totally destroyed by the fact that Lucasfilm and J.J. Abrams tried to react to what a certain segment of the fandom was screaming for, and they did it, and it ruined the movie. I mean, again, that's a subjective interpretation, granted, but that is the point of view that I have on it. So, no, I always believe the artist should do what the artist envisions. That's how we got Empire Strikes Back. That's how we get, I mean, it's just, yeah, no. It never now belongs to the fans. It belongs to the creators. And I think the creator should always do what they know is best. There's a reason, like, faceless keyboard warriors like me aren't professional filmmakers. Because we don't know what the hell we're doing. You are. You are the filmmaker. You do your vision. Now, we'll decide if we like it or not. We'll decide if we like it or not. Sometimes we will, sometimes we won't. But it needs to be your movie. It needs to be your movie. You and your team. It needs to be the movie that you envision that you want to do. And that's the way I think that filmmakers should approach it. So that's my take on it at any rate. And listen, no matter what you do with anything, once people get invested in something, somebody isn't going to like what you did next. That's just the reality. Somebody's not going to like what you did next, no matter what. So you can't worry about that. You have to worry about making your best story and then enjoy the success or tough out the defeat and accept the results, but at least make it your story and do what you want to do. So that to me is that's the philosophy to me at any rate. There might be some exceptions, but generally speaking, I think that should be the philosophy. All right. So next up, Julianne S. writes, I'm excited about seeing older movies on the big screen when theaters reopen. Me too. If I could pick an old movie, it would be The Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. I was too young to see it in 2001, and it's in my top 5 all time. If you could choose only one for theaters to replay, what would it be? Ooh, if I only had to pick one movie that I can go and watch on the big screen again, man, it might be Return of the King. That or Lawrence of Arabia. Yeah, I think either Return of the King or Lawrence of Arabia, because Return of the King, it's just such an epic conclusion to the whole franchise, and it really is something you got to see on the big screen. It's something you absolutely have to see on the big screen. Lawrence of Arabia is another one. You'll never fully appreciate the cinematography and the beauty of Lawrence of Arabia watching it on a television screen. You'll never, ever appreciate it the way it was meant to be appreciated on that. So I would say probably either Return of the King or Lawrence of Arabia. Those would be two of them. I mean, obviously Star Wars, but I mean, honestly, that would have to be on the big screen and go Lord of the Rings or Lawrence of Arabia. So that would be me, Julianne. All right, next up, Ben Rayner writes, Hey, John, happy Thursday. Thank you so much, Ben. I just wanted to thank you for all you do. Well, thank you so much. The amount of content you provide for us is amazing, and I am so in love with this community of film fans. Thank you for that. Also, did you watch the premiere of Doom Patrol yet? No, I have not. Not watched the premiere of Doom Patrol yet. Ann and I have been trying to spend a lot of time together, particularly in our evenings, so we've been a little bit busy, but I will get around to Doom Patrol. Because you know how much I'm looking forward to Doom Patrol, how excited I am for it. So I will get around to that post haste. All right. Thanks for that, Ben. All right. Next up, Kazam writes, Community is one of my favorite shows ever. Great writing, great characters. Troy and Abed are the best. Very original and hilarious. Probably one of the most underrated shows on TV. What are your thoughts on the show? And what is your favorite episode? Thanks. And a hashtag and a movie. Listen, the funny thing is about Community, I've talked about this a little bit recently. Which is, I didn't love Community all that much when it was on air. Like, I watched a couple of episodes and I was like, it's all right. And I just never got around to watching it after that. It wasn't until a while later, much while later, that my wife Ann started watching Community on streaming. So she would have it on our TV in our bedroom, and so I'd watch a couple. I'm like, this is really funny. And then I watched the next one with her. That was really funny. And then I watched another one. That was really funny. I love that show. I love Community. I don't think it's on the same level as, say, a Seinfeld or The Office or Parks and Rec. I don't think it's on that level, but I think it's really good. I think it's quite good. What would I say is my favorite episode? Man. You know, I just watched recently the one where Troy leaves to go sailing around the world. I just watched that one. It was really damn funny. The one where, what's another one? I don't know. I just think of the one where Carlo Esposito, the guy who is in Breaking Bad and is the Moth in Mandalorian, where he plays Chevy Chase's half brother, and they had to go into the video game for Chevy Chase to get his inheritance. That one was pretty good too. I don't know. There's a lot of them that I really like, but yeah, while I don't think it is a top tier all-time comedy, I do love it. I think it's really, really good. And I'm so glad I got turned back onto it. All right, next up. Austin Alberto writes, John, I know it's a rumor and I believe the source is tracked back to Grace Randolph, but is there any validity to Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern rumor? Apparently he plays the character again in the Snyder Cut. That sounds ridiculous to me, but you never know. Listen, they might look at something like this. Look, we're doing this ridiculous thing. So let's go balls to the wall. Like, remember, Warner Brothers is the same ones that went and got Ezra Miller to do a quick little cameo in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, right? Could they actually talk Ryan Reynolds into putting the Green Lantern suit back on again? I have my doubts. So to me, that sounds ridiculous. But hey, don't count anything out. Don't count anything out. I think it absolutely does sound completely ridiculous, and I don't think they're going to do it. But again, I don't know that for a fact. If they put Ezra Miller in a cameo in Crisis on Infinite Earths, maybe they had an idea for some quick little silly thing with Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern. Maybe, but I don't think that was ever part of Zack Snyder's original plan. I don't think that was ever part of Zack Snyder's original plan. And what the Snyder Cut is supposed to be is the reveal of Zack Snyder's original plan for the movie. And I don't think that was ever part of the original plan. But look, anything's possible. I ain't going to say it's impossible. It's possible. I doubt it. I think it sounds ridiculous, but it could. I mean, who knows? All right. Alston Alberto also writes, this one is just a thank you for all that you do for the film fan community. Thank you and keep up the great work. Oh, thank you so much, Austin. I appreciate that. And listen, it is my honor and privilege to do this show every day when the John Campea Show is on every day. We're on a bit of a hiatus right now, but I appreciate that very much. Thanks for being here and being a part of it. And thanks for supporting the channel, man. We appreciate that. All right, guys, last question. I'm going to take before, and then I'm going to take like a 2 or 3 minute break, rest the vocal cords, because we've been going for, an hour and 45 minutes right now. I'm going to rest the vocal cords, go refill my drink, stretch my legs for just a minute. So we're going to take a 2 or 3 minute break here after this next question. But don't go anywhere because we will, of course, be right back. John Klobukar writes, Do you still believe that Kathleen Kennedy is going to step down as head of Lucasfilm? I haven't heard anything about it ever since Bob Iger stepped down as CEO. I believe she should, since she is a gifted producer, but not a great studio head. Yeah, listen, I'm a big Kathleen Kennedy fan. And I loved the hire when they hired her. It was a good hire. George Lucas handpicked her. But listen, you can do the right things and have it not work out. Poker illustration. You can do the right thing. You got pocket aces. You go all in. Sure, it's a great move. But it doesn't always work out. Sometimes aces get cracked. Aces get cracked. I thought the hiring of Kathleen Kennedy was a great move. But Kathleen Kennedy, to me, has shown that she is not suited for the job. She's one of the greatest producers in Hollywood history. Just ask Steven Spielberg. She's one of the greatest producers in Hollywood history. Her resume is unequaled. But just because you're great at one thing doesn't mean you'll be great at everything. And it's become pretty clear that, and those of you who watch my show on a regular basis, you've heard me go ad nauseum into all the problems with Kathleen Kennedy being the head of Lucasfilm. The most important job, her number one job, is making sure that the filmmakers and her are 100% on the same page, understanding before you start moving forward with the production. And they're 6 projects in, and they've had 7 major turnovers. You look at Kevin Feige, he's had 2 major turnarounds over 20 films. Every single thing that they try to do with Star Wars over there, it seems like they have some big, massive drama behind the scenes. Because she has failed in getting on the same page 100% and properly vetting and making 100% sure she and the filmmakers were on the same page. And then you get all the disasters that come after that. Now, listen, they have still made money. For the most part, Solo was the first Star Wars movie in history that lost money. That's a movie that never should have been made in the first place. But the movies have still made money. Force Awakens, I thought, was wonderful. The Last Jedi was very divisive, but still made money. Rise of Skywalker, I think, was a very bad movie, but still made money. But it's like the Transformers, right? They kept putting out bad Transformers movies because they kept making money, but eventually that caught up with them. That eventually catches up with you and you do long-term damage. So what was the results? They did The Last Knight. Its box office dropped like a rock, right? It went from making $1 billion to barely over $500 million. And then the repercussions were still felt with Bumblebee, even though Bumblebee was a great movie. Bumblebee's great, but it only made 300 or 400 million. Let me just look this up here. Bumblebee box office. And so let me just check this out. 468 million, didn't even make $500,000. So you can do these things and you can still make money, but it will eventually catch up to you. We saw that happen with the Transformers franchise. You put out crappy movie after crappy movie after crappy movie. Eventually the audience goes, okay, you just fooled me too many times. And that's kind of what we saw with the Star Wars films, right? Force Awakens was brilliant and fantastic. Last Jedi was very divisive. I enjoyed it, but it was very, very divisive. And then you got into The Rise of Skywalker, which I just thought was terrible. And you saw that the box office, while still doing well and still being box office successes, making over $1 billion, but you did see it in decline. And we're getting to that critical mass point that Transformers hit, where it's now the audiences are not going to believe in it anymore. And you're going to do long-term damage. And when you look at all the ways that I believe Kathleen Kennedy, who I am a big fan of, but has dropped the ball, I have been saying now for years, she needs to step down. And I believe she does plan on stepping down. I believe in 2021, she will step down. I believe we're going to see her step down in 2021. I believe Bob Chapek, the new CEO of Disney, is going to want to bring in his own person. You know what? They could even be waiting for Alan Horn, who is the head of all Disney movies. They could be waiting for Alan Horn to retire again, because they've been promising Alan Horn forever that they're going to let him retire. Because remember, they dragged Alan Horn out of retirement. They dragged Bob Bob Iger went to Alan Horn and said, Alan Horn, I know you're enjoying retirement. Come out of retirement. We need you to help us rebuild the Disney movie empire. Alan Horn came out of retirement, totally architected the Disney movie empire, but he's been wanting to go back to retirement. And they just keep him there. And he's like, when can I go back to my retirement, guys? So they might be waiting for him to step down, for him to retire again, and then replace with the new head of all Disney movies. And then they're going to let that head of Disney movies, whoever Iger's replacement is, choose the successor for Kathleen Kennedy. So I think you're going to see her hold on to the job until 2021. And then she'll step down. They'll get somebody in to replace Bob Iger. I still think it might be Kevin Feige might replace Bob Iger. But whoever it'll be, that person will then get to choose who the head of their individual studios are. And that's when you'll see Kathleen Kennedy step down, I believe. All right, guys, we've been going for almost 2 hours now, so I'm going to take a quick 2 to 3 minute break. Go use the bathroom, talk amongst yourselves, hang out here for a little bit, guys, and I will be right back. Don't go anywhere. All right, guys, and we are back. Thank you so much for your patience and indulgence as I took a little bit of a break there and got refilled my drink. Now we're ready to keep right on rolling here. We're going to try to go a little bit faster here because I got less than an hour left here. So let's go as fast as we can. The next one up here, we're going to go to, where are we? That was John that we just finished with. Next one up is Mini Pastry Chef. I love the name, writes, "Hey John, with Mulan scheduled on July 24th, 1 week before Tenet, reports from Deadline that Disney is considering postponing the film again. With China movie theaters not reopening and COVID-19 cases are rising, will Mulan keep its release date? Thanks. All right. So, we talked about that off the top of the show about, with the rising cases, everything spiking in because people just want to act like idiots and not do the simple little things to protect themselves, to protect the people around them, because they're all selfish assholes. Anyway, because of that, we're seeing cases rising and spiking and all that kind of stuff. And whereas I have been very confident that movies like Mulan, that movies like Tenet, and stuff like that, we're going to definitely make their release. We're definitely going to make their release. I am simply not convinced of that anymore. I'm just simply not convinced of that anymore. With all the spiking cases and stuff like that, I'm not sure. And if I had, I don't know, look, it could very well still maintain its release date. It is possible. It's possible that could happen, that it could keep its release date. Maybe even 50-50. But I'm starting to suspect it won't. I'm starting to suspect that the theaters will not open mid-July. I hope they do. And I'm starting to suspect that Mulan won't make its release date of the 24th and Tenet won't make its release date of the 31st. I hope I'm wrong. I desperately hope that I'm wrong. But I don't think I'm wrong. Hopefully it will be. We'll find out. We'll find out. All right, let's keep moving here. Next up, Santos Ramirez writes, "Hey, John and friends, I wonder if you know any websites that allow me to write a story and share it online. Hope you enjoy your time off." Facebook, Twitter, Google Docs, any blogging platform. Yeah, you can write a story and share it anywhere online that you want. I'm not quite sure what you mean specifically. Like, you can write a story in a Google Doc and then share the Google Doc on your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Just share the link to it wherever you are. So yeah, just about anything. All you gotta do is write it and then create a link to it. Or, launch one of the free blog on one of a million different blog sites, write your story on there. So yeah, everywhere you can go, Santos, everywhere you can go to do that. All right. Next up here, we've got Avery Zavala writes, "Which actor turned director are you most excited for this decade? Bradley Cooper or John Krasinski?" That's a good question. John Krasinski. Listen, what Bradley Cooper did with A Star Is Born was wonderful. That movie was great. Star Is Born was wonderful. I loved it. But what John Krasinski did with A Quiet Place, which was my number one favorite movie of that year, what he was able to do without dialogue for a lot of that movie, and that he was able to create tension and blend in elements of family drama with sci-fi and action, and a lot of it, like I said, without dialogue or anything like that. I'm excited to see what both of these guys do. I'm excited to see what both of these guys do. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably give the edge to John Krasinski. Although, don't make no mistake, I am still very, very much looking forward to seeing what Bradley Cooper does as well. But for now, I'm going to lean towards John Krasinski. And who knows, maybe Quiet Place 2 sucks. I don't know. But right now, I'm going to go for John Krasinski. All right. Santos Ramirez writes, "Hey, what is your favorite TV show or movie and why?" Well, I'm not going to do an hour-long dissertation on that. This question pops in my head when I watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. I really like the world built in Avatar. That is not my favorite TV show. My favorite is BoJack Horseman because of the messages. Well, I mean, everybody knows my favorite movies of all time are Star Wars, period. My favorite TV show of all time, I have a top three, right? My top three are Sons of Anarchy, Spartacus, and the Ronald Moore Battlestar Galactica. I usually say that those are in no particular order, but really probably my favorite one is Ronald Moore's Battlestar Galactica. That is just a brilliant mesh and meld of sci-fi, mythology, fantasy, action, incredible characters, deep interconnected stories. It's just, I think it's the greatest television show ever made. And I think the greatest episode of television ever made is probably Exodus Part 2. or Exodus 2, I think is my favorite episode of television ever. As the Galactica and the Vipers break into the atmosphere and anyway, there's that. So yes, my favorite show of all time is Ronald Moore's version of Battlestar Galactica. Favorite movies of all time, obviously, are Star Wars movies. All right, the Wakandan Forever writes, "Hey John, it's been a while. I'm trying the live chat. I saw the pictures of King T'Challa / Chadwick Boseman. I thought it was just a movie role. Now I hear he's in the hospital. Do you know anything more? Everyone send thoughts and prayers. God bless. Thanks." You know what? I heard rumors that Chadwick Boseman had been rushed to the hospital, but I wasn't able to find it on any legitimate news source. That doesn't mean it's not true. But I wasn't able to find anything that verified that Chadwick Boseman actually went to the hospital. Again, I saw some reports on some sites that I wouldn't consider bigger, more legitimate outlets. But maybe there are, and I just didn't find them. So I don't know that if he did. Now, what he's referring to is a while ago, Chadwick Boseman put out a video message and he was talking about something, but what everybody was talking about was that he looked like he lost like 50 pounds and he looked really skinny. And some people got concerned about his health, and then other people said, it was probably just losing weight for a movie role. What the actual truth of that is I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. So yeah, I don't know. If he did have to go to the hospital, obviously, but I would think that if Chadwick Boseman was rushed to the hospital, it would have been, front cover news of Variety, The Hollywood Reporter. I think all of them, that would have been their top story, but I didn't see anything there. So unless maybe I just missed it, but I don't know if that's true, Wakan. That's the thing. I don't know if it's true. All right. Min writes, "John, what blue light glasses do you use?" Well, yeah, so I actually don't wear glasses. I used to wear these yellow glasses. What I found was, because I'm surrounded by 1, 2, 3, 4 monitors, 3 bright lights, and all this stuff, I used to find that after I would do a show, I would get headaches and stuff like that. Then years ago, somebody recommended that I start using Gunnar glasses. Now, they were yellow though, and it looked like I was trying to be a cheap Bono knockoff whenever I'd wear the yellow Gunnar glasses. Then I found these new Gunnar glasses that had their UV filtration that were clear. And I bought another pair as well that did the same thing, but I think these are Gunnars. I think these ones are Gunnars. All right, anyway, Israel King writes, "Seeing huge disrespect for Reed Druckmann," I think you mean Neil Druckmann, director of Last of Us 2, calling him Cuckman and sending him major hate is not okay. He was a fan of the first game. Well, he created the first game. He wasn't a fan of the first game. He was the creative director of the first game. It was his game. He was a fan of the first game and just made a game that he would have wanted to play. People can disagree, but death threats you probably meant are not okay. Well, yeah, listen, Druckmann he wasn't just a fan of the first game. He was the writer and creative director of the first game. He was also the writer and creative director of Uncharted Thief's End, and he's the creative director and writer of Last of Us 2. And yeah, listen, whenever you see somebody like do names like that, like Cuckman, that's like, oh, okay, so you're just one of those totally insecure little beta males that if you see a woman in a lead role, you get all insecure. So if somebody uses a phrase like that, that's a dead giveaway that they're one of those people. Now remember, there's a lot of people out. Don't lump everybody who doesn't like Last of Us 2 in with that group of pathetic little weasels. Don't lump them all into that. They're not the majority. There are a lot of people out there who just didn't like the game because it didn't work for them. And that's totally fair and that's totally fine. But yeah, if you ever see the odd person like throwing around terms like that, that's a fire sign that that's a little insecure beta male who is so insecure in their own masculinity they can't handle the fact that a woman was the lead of the story, right? And those people are pathetic. But they don't represent everybody who disliked the game. They don't even represent the majority of the people who like the game. I think I think the vast majority of the people who didn't like the game out there are just people who played the game, didn't work for them. For whatever reason, the story didn't click for them, the gameplay didn't click for them, whatever, and that's totally fair. Just like there are movies and TV shows that don't click for me, that didn't click for them, and I think that's the majority of them. But if you see anybody using terms like that, then you just tune them out, because they're clearly useless. Just tune them out. Okay. Old Man Playin writes, Follow-up. Dark Shadows was a dynamite. Yeah, somebody brought up Dark Shadows the other day. Was a daytime soap opera. I didn't know it was a daytime soap opera that ran from 1966 to 1971. It was a show decades ahead of its time, along with the usual soap opera tropes. It was full of paranormal, ghosts, vampires, werewolves, a human phoenix, even time travel. The Johnny Depp film was inspired by the series. I knew that. One thing that really hampered the film and made a bad form worse is that it relied on some knowledge of the show to make it work. I didn't know if that was true or not. Did it? I mean, maybe, because I saw the Johnny Depp film and it wasn't good. And I never felt like, oh, that feels like there's something from a show I needed to know. But maybe that's the truth. Maybe if I'd seen the show, I would have appreciated a few things about the movie more. That's a totally good point to raise. So maybe that's true, Old Man's Plane. Thanks for the follow-up on that, man. I appreciate that. All right. Avery Zavala writes, between two leads and a director, can you think of any movie that has more talent in those roles than Catch Me If You Can? I mean, you got Hanks, Leo, and Spielberg. I mean, yeah. I mean that too. That one's great. But then you can point at, The Irishman, Marty Scorsese, Robert De Niro, and Al Pacino. Right? That one's pretty good. I mean, you've got a lot. And there's a couple Scorsese films, or like Godfather. You got Marlon Brando and Al Pacino. That's pretty good. That one's not bad. But that one, yeah, Catch Me If You Can would rank up there. You know, Catch Me If You Can is one of the forgotten Spielberg films. And it's too bad because Catch Me If You Can truly is absolutely awesome. Catch Me If You Can is wonderful. I love that movie. But it is one of the forgotten Spielberg films. Not a lot of people talk about that one. Not a lot of people talk about that one when they bring up Spielberg films, and they should, and I should. All right, thanks for that. Curtis Lopez writes, it was just announced that Disney Channel, Disney XD, and Disney Junior are shutting down in the UK. A Disney spokesperson said Disney Plus will be the new home for these shows. I'm guessing cable channels in the USA will soon follow. Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear. I haven't heard that news official yet, but we talked about that a long time ago. Like, I mean, that just seems to make common sense, right? Like, I don't think any of us are surprised by that. Just like I don't think anybody should be surprised when they eventually announce that the DC Universe streaming channel is shutting down and it's just going to be absorbed into HBO Max. I mean, that's a no-brainer. That's going to happen. They're already losing all their shows and that are being absorbed into other networks too. So that's going to happen. Not surprised to hear this. I remember us talking about when Disney Plus was launching. When Disney Plus was launching, we talked about how, yeah, things like Disney XD and all that stuff's all probably going to go away. They won't try to double dip because it won't work out well for them. They'll probably put it all under Disney Plus. And it sounds like that's what they're doing. So you're right. I expect to hear North American confirmation of that probably pretty soon. Thanks for pointing that out, Curtis. Our next up, Diamond Dog's Puppy writes, hello, been a little while, good sir. Well, hello. Glad you're taking a mental and physical break. We all need it to recharge and reload. Take it easy and don't rush the return. Well, thanks so much, man. And yeah, again, doing these open mics is a lot easier because, you know, there's 10 plus hours just into going into one show in the John Campea Show, let alone all the other things that I got to do during the day of prep and all the different stories and the graphically and all that kind of stuff. There's so much goes into it. Whereas, you know, open mic, I just jump on, see what you guys are asking. We talk about it. Jump on, see what you guys are asking about. Let's talk about it. And that's about it. Which is great. I mean, it makes it so I'm able to take my break and still do open mics. So, but I'm only doing them like every other day. So like the next open mic will probably be Saturday like we normally do. And then we'll probably have an open mic on Monday, you know, so we're only doing that every couple of days, but I am already enjoying the break very much. And I'm getting more work done on my documentary in the last several days than I have in the last couple of months combined, which is also really good. So thanks for that, Diamond Dog. I appreciate that. All right. Starscream writes, hey, John, watching you from the great beyond. F that Galvatron guy. I'm off to Triptychon to grab some eyes for Unicron. Well, hope vacation is good, and I really hope the theater's open and Tenet is not postponed again. I will wear a hazmat suit. Stay safe. I mean, listen, I am with you. Like, believe me, even though I'm starting to doubt that the theaters are going to open and that Mulan and Tenet will hit those release dates, even though I'm starting to doubt it. Don't confuse that with my desire for them to hit it. Like, I want to see these movies. Listen, and we're always talking about Tenet, understandably. I'm also very, very excited for Mulan. I'm really excited for Mulan. I think it looks great. I've been stoked for this movie for a while. So, I mean, here's hoping, man. I would love it to be open. I'll be there with bells on, but I'm just starting to wonder if it's actually going to happen. That's all. Anyway, thanks for writing in, Starscream. And, don't put that crown on your head too quickly. You get vaporized and it'll just drop to the ground. All right, Kevin Yu writes, hey, John, with the success of Aquaman, Shazam, Joker, and Wonder Woman 84 to look forward to, is Walter Hamada already DC's version of Kevin Feige, or do you think he needs more successful movies under his belt before he's held to that high regard? I think he needs a little bit more under his belt. Like, I already love the job that Walter Hamada has done with DC, right? I know a lot of people got really nervous when he took the reins and it kind of came out that he was going to focus more on individual movies more than cinematic universe, and everybody got worried. But look at the results. Academy Awards, $2 billion films, great critic responses, great audience responses. It's been really successful. It is still a little bit early. And again, it looks like we're getting ready to hit this big turning point. So let's give it a little while. It's far too soon to anoint him the DC's success equivalent of Kevin Feige. It is too soon for that. But he's off to a good start. Let's see what happens with this whole Michael Keaton thing and Henry Cavill and Flashpoint and whatever other nonsense they're going to do. Let's see what happens. And it could get to that point. So too soon to say that, but he's off to a good start. He's definitely off to a good start. All right, next up, Diamond Dog's Puppy writes, underrated film of the day is 1995's Congo. Many call it a terrible Jurassic Park ripoff. I don't care. Wasn't it written by the same guy? Like, didn't Crichton write that as well? I could be wrong. Fun adventure with dated animatronics, but a wonderful Ernie Hudson and deep supporting cast and a rousing score. Love it. Thoughts? I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't love Congo. I did not love Congo. Let me bring it up here. That's right. Laura Linney was in that. Tim Curry was in that too, by the way. Let me bring it up here. Wait for it to load. There it is. Okay. Let's bring it up here. Laura Linney was in it. Man, that movie is 25 years old. That is crazy. And Frank Marshall directed. And yes, it was the writer. Michael Crichton did write the novel for that. Laura Linney, Ernie Hudson, Tim Curry. Yeah, I don't recognize any of the other people in there off the top of my head. But yeah, I'm gonna. I wish I could side with you on this one, Diamond Dog. I wish I could, but I just can't. I was not a big fan of Congo. Good to admit, I wasn't a big fan of Congo. And listen, I unfortunately have to kind of agree with it's a poor man's Jurassic Park. It really did kind of feel like that, especially the movie version. But just like we're saying all the time, and like we were saying earlier today, it's all subjective, man. And if you enjoyed Congo, that is awesome. Don't let the fact that I didn't like it sour your enjoyment of the film. If you like it, that's the important thing. It's all subjective. It hits us in different ways. Anyway, man, I still can't believe that movie's like 25 years old. I still can't believe that. Is crazy to me. All right, next up. Mr. Graham 91 writes, worst case scenario, AMC closes their doors. Studios impacted tremendously. Where would the movie industry go? Will they still make movies? Will they make as many movies like we're used to getting? This is my worst nightmare. Listen, this is the industry's worst nightmare. There is a reason all these studios keep delaying these movies and just throw their garbage on streaming like Artemis Fowl. They just throw their garbage on streaming because, they got to throw it somewhere. They're running out of release dates and just throw it. There's a reason they keep delaying Wonder Woman instead of just putting it onto streaming. There's a reason they delay Tenet instead of just putting it onto streaming. There's a reason that Mulan got delayed to July 24th and it might get delayed again. It's because they know the actual money gets made in the theaters. That's where the real money gets made. There is not as much, there's not a tenth the money that gets made theatrically, generally speaking. Again, I want to bring everybody's attention to the Hollywood Reporter did this big roundtable discussion a couple of months ago with all the major studio heads. Alan Horn was there representing Disney. You had the Sony head, you had the Paramount head, you had the Netflix head, you had you had all of them. All the major studio heads were all part of this roundtable. It's on YouTube. You can go find it. And home distribution came up, and it's like, yeah, we don't really make any money off that. I mean, we make some money. Yes, they make some money. They do make some money, but it's nothing compared to the money that gets generated in the theatrical release. That's where the money's made. And if they don't have that money, I can't even begin to think about what's going to happen to the movie industry. You can forget about like getting many of these $150 million, $200 million blockbusters. Yes, some of them will still get made, but man, it is a nightmare scenario. I was actually talking to somebody at Warner Brothers, and the term they used was nightmare scenario. That was the term they used, nightmare scenario. So believe me, they want these theaters back open. They want everything getting back. They want to put these movies out in theaters, all that kind of stuff, because the longer this goes, the more damage is getting done. And if AMC gets put into a position right now where they have to delay opening their theaters even more, I don't know that they're going to open again at all. Straight up, I don't know that they're going to open again at all. I mean, AMC is already saying, even though we can reopen, we don't know if we're going to be able to stay in business. And that's just with the damage that's already been done. If they need to delay their opening by another month and a half, another 2 months, they're dead. And if they're dead, there goes a lot of money that the movie studios were going to make in their theaters. A lot of money that they're going to lose out on. It's a terrible situation for everybody right now. It's just awful. Awful, awful, awful. Anyway, Avery Zavala writes, "Hey, John, I know you say Daniel Day-Lewis is the best actor of today in a class of his own, but would you consider Hanks, Leo, Russell Crowe to be close behind and then everyone else?" Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis, I believe, is the GOAT. He is the greatest of all time. He is the Bret the Hitman Hart of acting. He is the best there is, the best there was, the best there's ever going to be. Daniel Day-Lewis is the gold standard. So there's him, and then there's the next level down. Who are the actors that I would put on that pedestal? Well, definitely the ones you just mentioned. Russell Crowe is my favorite actor, actually. Tom Hanks, Leo DiCaprio, Denzel Washington. Who else would I put on that next level down? That might be it. Now, then you go to the next level where you get also amazing, incredible actors. Chiwetel Ejiofor, Brad Pitt, Jake Gyllenhaal, other actors of that caliber, a Robert De Niro, an Al Pacino, like really great. They're really, really great. So great, cream of the crop, and then above them all is Daniel Day-Lewis. So yeah, I would put those actors you mentioned as well as a Denzel Washington. I would put on that second tier, the first tier under Daniel Day-Lewis. Then under that are the truly great Hollywood actors. Again, Jake Gyllenhaal, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Al Pacino, Brad Pitt, stuff like that. And then you get down to like really good actors and then decent actors and then all the rest. But yeah, I think that sounds pretty good to me, Avery, the way you got that set up. All right, next up, Julius A. Goodwin writes, one of two. I was thinking the other day, the DCEU isn't the only one who tried to rush headlong into things. Iron Man 2, for instance, tried to push the whole demon in a bottle tale, a story that took a chronological year into a 2-hour or so film. Was just wondering why the MCU's mistakes, the aforementioned Iron Man 2 and Thor: The Dark World, haven't killed them as much as DC cinematic mistakes have hurt them. Well, I think for a couple of big things. Number one, that whole demon and model thing, that was never a big deal to the MCU. They never tried to make that a big thing. That was a side plot in one movie. Like, it's not like the MCU said, we are going into the devil in a bottle storyline over the next 4 films. It was a minor side point in a single movie. Right? So, and they handled it. I thought that was one of the more interesting things I thought that was one of the more interesting things that that Iron Man 2 had. Iron Man 2 is not that good. But the whole struggling with alcoholism thing in the midst of everything he'd been going through, that was one of the more interesting things of it. But also, when you look at like Thor: The Dark World, it's an okay movie. It just wasn't great. But the important thing is the MCU had already had a number of big successes before we ever got to Thor: The Dark World, right? Like we had Iron Man. And we had Captain America, the first Avenger. And we had the first Hulk movie. And in the case of Thor: The Dark World, we already had Avengers. Right? We already had Avengers. So the MCU was already established of this is a high quality thing. This is a high quality thing. And then they've hit the odd little bump in the road here and there. Sure. The Iron Man 2 thing was just not a great movie, but the Devil in a Bottle thing, that was nothing because they never intended that to be a big story. That was just a small side plot in a single movie, not a big deal. But they already established themselves as being high quality and successful. So that's the key. The DCEU didn't. I mean, you know me. I think Man of Steel, which launched the DCEU, I think Man of Steel is one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. Easily the most underrated comic book film of all time. But the reality is half the audience hated it. So it is what it is. The DCU never got itself established. You know, and they tried to run before they walked. And listen, I don't care. Like they could have, instead of Man of Steel, they could have launched the DCU with a full-blown Justice League movie. I completely reject this whole notion that, oh, you in order to do a cinematic universe, and if you're going to do it, you have to do it by doing 5 standalone individual character movies, and then no, you don't have to do the Marvel formula. You don't have to do that. All you got to do is make great movies that people love, and that's not easy. But again, one of the things I always go back to is take Guardians of the Galaxy, for example. They didn't have to do a Star-Lord movie and then do a Gamora movie and then do a Drax the Destroyer movie and then do a Groot movie and then do a Rocket the Raccoon movie and then you bring them all together for Guardians of the Galaxy. They didn't need to do that. They just, boom, Guardians of the Galaxy, go. They could have done that with Justice League. The problem, everybody thinks it's the formula. Right? What formula did you follow? Ooh, did you follow the MCU formula of individual team, individual team? Is that, did you do that formula or did you do the wrong formula? It's not the formula. It's just the execution of the movie that you put forward. That's it. It's just the execution of the movie that you put forward. If they had come out of the gate with a Justice League movie and knocked it out of the park, it would have been, everything would have been great. Or they could have come out of the gate with a Green Lantern movie. Not the Ryan Reynolds one. But I mean, the new DCU, they could have come out of the gate with a Green Lantern movie, and if they crushed it and got the audience on board and got the critics on board and had big, then that's all that would have mattered. It's not the formula. It's the execution. And so, yeah, I think DC could have been, I mean, again, I still don't understand why more people don't appreciate the brilliance that is Man of Steel. I still don't get it. I accept it because all film's subjective, so I accept it. I'm just saying I don't get it because I think that movie is freaking brilliant, man. But anyway, there we go. All right, let's see. Oh, there was one before that there. Evan Ryan writes, hey, John, Justin Poirier versus Dan Hooker this Saturday. Who are you picking? I'm going with Poirier by decision. It's going to be a banger, man. That is going to be a banger because Dan Hooker is no joke. I would love to see Dan Hooker and Justin Gaethje. That's a fight I'd love to see. I mean, listen, Poirier looked unstoppable until he ran into Khabib, right? And then Khabib did to him what he does to everybody. He swarms them, he mauls them, he smashes them, and that's what he did to Poirier. Poirier versus Gaethje would be great. Hooker versus Gaethje. I mean, these three guys are bangers. Poirier, Gaethje, Dan Hooker. Any matchup of any two of those is great. Doesn't matter because eventually they got to face the Eagle and Khabib, and Khabib will swarm, maul, and smash them all, so it doesn't matter. But I think it's going to be a great fight. I will agree with you. I'm going to go Poirier by decision. These are two tough sons of bitches. I see it going the distance, and Poirier by decision. Could also be, these guys are both such hard hitters too. It could be a first-round knockout. Could be a first-round knockout for either of them. But I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go Poirier over Hooker. And then we just keep getting closer to that 3-title fight Island night, which I'm so excited about. All right. Let's see here. Julius A. Goodwin writes, just saw the Doom Patrol Season 2 trailer. Just wondered how they were going to follow up on the outstanding Season 1. My fears have been laid aside. I can't wait for this one, but I hate to say it. That little girl, Dorothy, is truly hideous. Yikes. I watched the trailer once, and then I didn't watch it again. I'm like, okay, I've seen enough. I'm ready to go. But you're right. Whenever you get a show like Umbrella Academy, Doom Patrol, The Boys, you got to worry. How are they going to follow up with Season 2? For me, also the animated Harley Quinn show. I love Season 1. I was a little bit worried about Season 2. Season 2 has been even better than Season 1. So yeah, I do have that little bit of fear and trepidation for all three of those shows. Boys, Doom Patrol, Umbrella Academy. I love Season 1 of all those shows. And I've got a little bit of a fear and nervousness about their second seasons. A little bit of fear and nervousness about their second seasons. But the trailers look good. The Umbrella Academy trailer looked great. I love their little announcement video. I love the Doom Patrol Season 2. Can't wait for The Boys Season 2. I think we got some good things ahead of us, Julius. I really do. All right. Luis Herds writes, hey, John, I've been a viewer for at least 6 years now. Oh, man, thank you so much for being with me for that long, since I was in high school, and this is the first time I'm writing in a question. I recently got a 75-inch TV, and I've been watching a lot of different movies that I normally wouldn't have seen. I've seen the whole Harry Potter series, nice, the Lord of the Rings, and the Hobbit movies, and I just started the Star Wars series. Am currently watching the Attack of the Clones. My question is, which Star Wars movies is your favorite cinematically? Oh, it's Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie. Like, there's the original trilogy, and then there's everything else. Like, there's the original trilogy, Star Wars, Empire, Return of the Jedi. To me, Return of the Jedi is the best of the Star Wars movies, but it's all like 1A and 1B. Like, it's all super close. For me, Return of the Jedi is the best one. But I mean, it's so close to my love of Empire and my love of the original. But yeah, easy and simple. But that is fun, man. I remember when I got my first TV, I think, not my first TV, but my first large plasma TV, back when you could still buy plasma TVs. It's a plasma! That's the dinner party quote for you. Anyway, I went from like a 24-inch TV to a 50-inch TV, right? And to me, it was like the gates of heaven opened up. And I was like, I just watched movies for like, without sleeping for like 72 straight hours. To me, it was the most incredible thing. Of course, now I've got a 75-inch hung above the fireplace, a nice sound system, all really good. And you realize it's still just a TV. It's still just a TV. I mean, it's no movie theater screen or anything like that. But I remember that feeling, man, when I got that, the first time I made a first real big legitimate jump in size of my personal TV. It was like, oh, the angels sang. You know, it's a nice feeling, man. It's a nice feeling. And if you're anything like me, you're going to be hooked just watching movies on that big screen at home, man. You're going to be hooked on that for a couple of days. And then the novelty of it will wear off and you realize it's just another TV. But still, man, that first week is really cool, especially if you're coming from something much smaller. Like, I went from like 24 to 50. If you're going from something like 48 to 75, then that's that same kind of, wow, it's such a big difference thing, right? I hope you enjoy it, man. I hope you have a good time. And thank you for watching the show for that long, man. That's going all the way back to the AMC days. I'm glad you've been around that long, man. Thank you so much for that. All right. Emad writes, which audience reaction puzzled you most? Man of Steel, Lion King, or Last of Us 2? Well, the reality is most people I talk to love Last of Us 2. That's the thing. There's a very, very, I believe, vocal minority out there. There's a very, very vocal minority out there that don't like Last of Us 2. And hey, it is what it is. It's fine. I mean, I get it. There's, a beloved character dies, and people are upset about that. You know, the people who get mad at that remind me of the character from Misery. If you never saw the Academy Award winning film Misery, go and watch that. That's who those people are. But anyway, again, but they're the minority. They're not the people. They're not the average people who just didn't like the game. I just think that's a vocal minority. I think the thing that I'm most puzzled by is Man of Steel. Like, I loved Lion King, but I get it. It was different. There's a new song piece in it. Like, I love Beyonce, but the Beyonce song in the movie didn't work for me. I didn't think she was a particularly good voice actress for it either. I could see a lot of things where somebody might not like it, even though I loved it. But I could see that. Yeah, there's a lot of movies that I love that I could go, yeah, but I could totally see why a lot of people wouldn't like that. But Man of Steel, I don't. Man of Steel, I just think everything about Man of Steel is brilliant. And again, I know all film is subjective, so I respect that a lot of people don't agree, and that's great. Nothing wrong with that. But I don't get it. I'm not going to pretend that I get it. Whereas with Lion King, it's like, yeah, I love the movie, but I could see why these changes and these differences wouldn't work for everybody, and I get that, and I do. But so I would say the Man of Steel reaction, because it's at least half the people didn't like, not only didn't like it, half the people hated it. And I think it's just brilliant on every level. So that's the one that still puzzles me the most. All right, Kazam writes, also asked a while back, what are the top 5 best films of 2020 so far? I forgot to ask, what are the top 5 worst films of 2020? I don't do top 5s. You should know that. I don't do top 5s or whatever. I don't do those. Anyway, top worst films of 2020. I know it's slim pickings, but there's some trash out there. A cough, cough, Bloodshot. Yeah, that was terrible. Thanks and stay safe. Well, you know, if you've watched me long enough, you know I don't do top 5s and top 10s. You know that. So I will say, though, that, yeah, Bloodshot was abysmal. Bloodshot was abysmal. The other one that I also really didn't like, and when I say Bloodshot was abysmal, that's not to say there weren't some redeeming qualities about it. There were. Bloodshot had some redeeming qualities. Still, overall, pretty bad movie. And probably my least favorite movie of the year so far. Probably. I'd have to look up a full list of the films of 2020 that did make it out. But at any rate, the other one I was really disappointed in was The Hunt, because I thought it looked pretty good. And I was kind of excited for The Hunt. And then I went to go watch it, and I thought the movie was all idea, no execution. Like, they just didn't know how to. They had this concept for a movie, but it didn't really think it through about how to make this into a truly, really good motion picture. And The Hunt disappointed me on a lot of levels. It disappointed me on a lot of levels. So I would say right now, off the top of my head, I would say the worst one so far this year is Bloodshot, which hurts to say because I'm a big Vin Diesel fan. Like, I really like Vin Diesel a lot. Was not a big fan of that movie. Next one up would probably be The Hunt. But again, if I had a full list of all the films of 2020, maybe I'd pick out another one or two. But those are the ones that come to mind right now. Those are the ones that come to mind, my friend. All right, next up. Kevin Lewis writes, hey, John, if the theaters are only going to allow 25 to 50% of seats, do you think they will try to make it up by opening 3 or 4 hours earlier or staying open later for more screenings? Heck, maybe even 24 hours. No. See, here's the thing, though. You got to understand, the average movie theater is usually only at about 20% to 20 to 30% capacity. The average movie screening. So like, you take every screening that happens in a movie theater over the course of a week. So at like an AMC Burbank 16, if you average out all 16 theaters and the 5 different showtimes they have over 7 days of the week, they only average out to about 20 to 30% capacity. It's the big opening nights of the brand new movies that pack out the theaters, but it averages out to about 20 or 30%. So for like, if they put, I don't know, I was pulling the Mulan, the animated movie. Like, if they put Mulan, the animated movie in, well, that wasn't going to sell out anyway, right? So what you're going to have here is that, like, if everything opens up on schedule, what you're going to have is you're going to have a situation where you're going to have a movie like, say, Mulan opening up, the new Mulan opening up, and it may be 25 to 50% capacity, but they will be able to make up for that, say at the AMC Burbank 16, instead of it being on 3 screens, they'll put it on 10 screens because there's nothing else, right? So they will, in theory, be able to make more money on Mulan with 50% seating capacity on 10 screens than they would have at 100% capacity on 3 screens. Think about that. And then when Tenet opens up, okay, so now you got Mulan and Tenet. You got 16 screens. Put Mulan on, now that Mulan's in week 2, put Mulan on 6 screens. Put Tenet on, 8 screens. And you still got 2 screens left over for some older films if you want, right? Or you can fill up all 16 screens. I remember the night the first Avengers opened up, every single screen in the AMC Burbank 16 was all Avengers. So that's how they're going to compensate for it. Is that, yes, there's only so much seating capacity, but there's only a couple of movies. Mulan is going to be the only major movie opening up that weekend. They're going to be able to put that on most of their screens, so it'll make up for that. So that's kind of the strategy going in. Whether or not that strategy works or not, we will have to wait and see. We'll find that out. Okay, let's see here. What's next? James L. Did I get Kevin's? Yes, that was Kevin. Okay, good question, Kevin. Next up, James L.H. writes, "Hey, John, with the passing of Joel Schumacher, I just wanted to mention my favorite films of his were Lost Boys." That one was great. I love that movie. A Time to Kill, but also Two with Colin Farrell, Phone Booth, and Tigerland. I like Phone Booth a lot, actually. That was one, and I believe Forrest Whitaker. Was it not Forrest Whitaker in that one as well? Hold on, let me look it up. I thought it was Forrest Whitaker. 2002's Phone Booth. Colin Farrell. Yeah. Oh, and Keith Sutherland. Keith Sutherland, Forrest Whitaker. Yep. Katie Holmes. I like that movie. I do. I like that one. Man, that movie was 18 years ago. Give me a break. But yeah, Lost Boys. Last Boys, People Are Strange. That's the movie that got me into The Doors. It was just the soundtrack of that song playing over Lost Boys. I love that movie. I love that movie so much. So that's a good one. Thanks for bringing that one up, James. All right, next up. Russell Amador writes, "Hey, John, by any chance, have you seen the new trailer for Waiting for the Barbarians?" I have not. It stars Robert Pattinson and Johnny Depp. Oh, I know the movie you're talking about, but I have not seen the trailer for it. It stars Johnny Depp and has definitely caught my interest. At the very least, I'm curious to see once it drops. Any thoughts? No, I'm familiar with the film. Hold on a second. Oh. Waiting for the Barbarians. Now, this is a movie. Did this go straight to video? Man, Robert Pattinson's done a number of movies where he's like a French Foreign Legion outpost type. But no, I have not seen anything from this. I've not seen anything from this. Other than I heard it's not very good, but I haven't seen anything for myself, including I haven't seen. By the way, Mark Rylance is also in that. I love Mark Rylance. So no, not much about it. Did it go straight to streaming or something? It says it came out in 2019. No, it's scheduled for August 7th, 2020. Okay, so it was complete in 2019. It has been screened at several festivals. It doesn't have great user reviews. I've heard it's not that great, but again, I don't know. I haven't even watched a trailer for it myself. But that's an interesting combination. All right. Let's move on here. Next up, I've only got a couple of minutes left here, guys. Casinema Reviews writes, I watched Insomnia last night. It felt kind of slow at times, but still really good, and the acting is great. Which Nolan movie should I watch next, Memento or Dunkirk? Also, happy Doom Patrol Season 2 premiere day. I'm very excited to watch Doom Patrol. Memento. Dunkirk's great. Don't get me wrong. Dunkirk's really great. I enjoyed it very much. But Memento is a top 3 Christopher Nolan film to me. It's also the movie that really put Nolan on the map. And it's brilliant, and it holds up. So after watching Insomnia, I would say the next one to watch is Memento. I mean, you wouldn't go wrong watching Dunkirk either, but I would say Memento is the one you got to put up there next. All right, enjoy it, man. Enjoy it. All right, Danzig 1979 writes, "Greetings from the UK, John." Well, thank you so much. "I've been exercising more since the lockdown and managed to lose 34 pounds Good on you, man. That's not easy. Well done, sir. Since the lockdown started, since the start, I have listened to the podcast, and you've been my personal trainer with me during my long walks. Would you ever consider putting the open mic up as a podcast? I missed the show, but I'm glad you're recharging the batteries. Also, if you get a chance, you may want to check out Gangs of London, a series from Sky/Cinemax from Gareth the Raid Evans. Thanks. You know, it's funny you mentioned that show because somebody mentioned that as well a couple of weeks ago on the show. I haven't had a chance to check it out, but somebody else mentioned Gangs of London. I may have to check it out at some point. As far as the audio version of the podcast, here's the thing. The podcast-only version of the John Campea Show used to be something just for our Patreon members. But our Patreon members said, John, you have our blessing to go and make it available to everybody, which was really generous on the part of our Patreon supporters. However, we kept open mic as only being for Patreon supporters because I still wanted to have something that's exclusive besides our, our Zoom meetups and things like that. I wanted to have something that was still exclusively for our Patreon members. And one of the things we said was that open mics will be one of those things that is still exclusively in podcast form available only to our Patreon members. And so, yes, so there is a podcast version of it, but it is exclusively for our Patreon members. Now, look, there are ways you can do it yourself. You can download the YouTube video, go to one of those services, rip out the audio and put the MP3 on your phone, and then you can listen to it yourself. I know that's a lot of work, but that is open mics being available in audio only edition. That is an exclusive for our Patreon supporters, and we're going to keep it like that for now. But I appreciate you asking. Thanks so much. But don't worry, the podcast will return as soon as the John Campea Show fires back up in the next couple of weeks. All right, thanks for asking, man. And hey, man, seriously, 34 pounds in a couple of months. That's unreal. That's amazing. Congratulations on it, and I hope you're able to keep that off, man. Well done, sir. All right. Let's see. James L.H. writes, hey, John, I'm waiting for cinemas to open. Not sure you know, here in the UK, surprisingly, Cineworld are not making customers wear masks. The employees at Cineworld Action Group are petitioning against that for their own safety. I agree and understand their point. And I agree. I believe it should be a requirement that when you come into the theater, you should be wearing a mask. And when you're not in your seat, separated from other people, you should have your mask on. I believe it should be required. Now, remember, Cineworld also wasn't going to make, because Cineworld owns Regal. Regal wasn't going to mandate people wearing masks either, and neither was AMC. But people spoke up, and AMC quickly changed their position. So, okay, we are going to require people to wear masks when they're not sitting in their seats in the theater. And then Regal followed suit and said, yep, we're going to do it too. I wouldn't be surprised if Cineworld follows suit. Again, I don't live in the UK, so I don't know for sure, but it seems to me that that's something that they would do as well and follow suit. So we'll find out soon enough. All right, guys. Last question of the day comes to us from Damo Davies, who writes, I heard a rumor from Midnight's Edge that Warner Brothers is courting Tim Burton to direct a Batman Beyond movie with Johnny Depp to play Joker and the Return of Joker storyline, retroactively making Burton's Batman Batflick a trilogy. I think I wouldn't buy that at all. I wouldn't believe that at all. Again, it's kind of like the other thing that was mentioned earlier about what was the thing we were just talking about earlier? And I said it's not impossible. Nothing's impossible right now. Again, in a world where Ezra Miller's Flash is popping up in Crisis on Infinite Earths on CW, in that world, anything can happen. But that just sounds ridiculous. I wouldn't buy that for a second. I wouldn't buy that for a second. But again, don't bet the house against it because we are in an era where anything can happen. I just don't think that sounds believable at all. But hey, there are several things that happen in life that seem absolutely inconceivable, and then they do. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Anyway, guys, okay, listen, there are a few questions left over. However, I have a 1 o'clock meeting that I need to go and be a part of, and we're getting close to 3 hours in this broadcast. So we're going to have to call it a day here on this installment of Open Mic. Now, for those of you who still have questions outstanding, do not worry. There's not many of them left. So do not worry. On Saturday's Open Mic, we are going to start Saturday because we still have a few questions here from Dalton Burdett, Curtis Lopez, Ready Teddy Seti, and Peter P. Don't worry, guys. All the questions that we still have lined up here, I got them. They're here. They're not going anywhere. And we will start Saturday's show by taking your questions first, and then we'll get into the new ones. And by the way, guys, you can start sending in questions, whether you're watching this on Twitch or on YouTube or on Facebook or anywhere. You can send in questions anytime, 24/7 at the tip link. That's at streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You can send it in there. You'll be getting your comment or question on the show, and you're supporting the channel at the same time. And all of us here at the John Campea YouTube channel, thank you guys very, very much for that. So again, on Saturday's open mic, which will be at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we will start with our leftover questions, and then we'll roll right into the new ones. And you can start sending in the new ones right now. All right, guys, that will do it for me for today. Thank you guys so much for being here. And a special thank you to you guys who did send in all these questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported the channel while you were doing it. Again, all of us here are very, very grateful to you for that. All right, guys, that'll do it for me for now. Remember, do the 4 important things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and most importantly, take care of the people around you. That's it for me. My name is John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.